Yeah, they'll believe us.
Good evening. Welcome to Pellowe Talk. It is the crazy, harebrained crazy week before the Church and State Summit, this Friday and Saturday. And as such, tonight is super casual. In fact, it's so casual, I forgot I invited a guest to the studio tonight. Made alternate plans to publish an interview just because I'm just so unprepared for anything. But Florian from Heise Says, a great, successful YouTube channel, has popped in, and we thought, look, you're here anyway. Let's have a drink of apple juice or iced tea, and then we thought, well, seeing you here anyway, with or without preparation, let's have a bit of a chat. So that's what we're doing. And Florian, thank you so much for coming along, and thank you for being so gracious in the complete ignorance of me forgetting you.
Well, I feel real heartbroken. I'm not special at all, but I'm used to that. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for this finely aged apple juice. It's going down quite smoothly. Yes,
it is. Tonight is relaxed, and to avoid looking slovenly, I did up 2 buttons. So I only undid 1. I should probably say.
I'm impressed with your setup here. I'm really, I've seen your show online, but you've got your show. The problem is I'm renovating my house, and I'm going to come home now and go to Rachel, I've got to change everything. So she's going to be angry at you. Don't be surprised if you get an angry phone call from my wife, but I'm impressed with your setup here. It's looking really good.
Matt Wong, one of our good friends in Melbourne, has a really great studio in his home, bigger than this. I think it's another meter in each direction. And yeah, that's a renovation in his home. So before you go and change the plans to your home, pop you down to Melbourne. We'll make sure you have a good research and look around at what backyard studios are doing nowadays.
The only problem is I would never get out of Danistan. I'd be locked away for 7 years once you go down to Melbourne.
Rachel, if you're watching, the strategy is to tell him he can't do it until he's been there and finished at least quarantine. It could be several years away.
Yeah, sadly.
It's a great stalling tactic. And you may just put it off because the prospect of not coming back is too hard. We literally don't have any plans tonight. I can talk the leg off an iron pot under wet cement with a mouthful of marbles, so it won't be terrible. And I do have some things to talk about, but why don't you, watching in the comments, let us know. Or you might not be watching in the comments, but you watching in the comments, let us know what's news today. I think I heard Craig Kelly is quitting, walking away from the Liberal Party. That's got to be discussion worthy. I can Google the news and bring it up. Are you familiar with the story?
Yeah, I looked at it today. He's resigned from the Liberal Party, and well, I mean, you look at how the media portray him. They're portraying him as an anti-vaxxer. You look at what he's saying. He's just someone who is for vaccination, for what the government's proposing, but also wants to suggest alternative treatments. Ways of looking at it and putting it all on the table. Now, I kind of, I would advocate for a similar thing. You don't want to just simply dismiss something. You want to consider all options. And he's brave enough to do that, but he's going against party lines. So they have to, it looks like that he's been told to behave. And, well, he's stepped away now from it. And honestly, I think a lot of people will respect him for it. It'll be interesting to see where he winds up, because there's going to be other parties trying to headhunt him. But, I mean, nothing he said seems too controversial, but of course the media is portraying him like some nutter or some loon. But when you look at what he's saying, most people would agree with it. I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm probably just lazy with regards to the whole vaccine rollout. I'll find other ways to mitigate my risks before I jump into something a little early. And that should be the freedom of choice that all people have. At least that's what most people would reasonably expect, that you can have a choice.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised at what's happened. I'm a little sad at it, though. But I mean, we'll see where he goes. It sounds like the nationals are trying to chase him, and One Nation is trying to get him on board as well. So we'll see.
Okay, so somebody's just let me know that my microphone isn't on. So you keep talking, and I will pop away. That is how relaxed we are tonight.
Okay.
Have I got your spelling and name correct?
You have. You've got me perfectly right. Yep, that's all good. It's all good. So I'll just talk to everyone there. How you all going, guys? I'm going to tell you a secret. This isn't apple juice. So it's it's interesting. Well, one thing that I've noticed that because when we met years ago, it was quite early in my my journey into Christianity, because I'd come from being an atheist, and for me that was early in my stages, and it was quite probably naive for me to realize how little political activity there is in a lot of religions here and churches here in Australia. A lot of people are just as apathetic in the churches as average Australians. I think a lot of Australians are very, she'll be right, mate, I'll just vote for the same party, or I won't get involved, or I'll leave it for someone else. And one thing I was impressed with what you've been doing, particularly for the last few years, is advocating more for people to get involved and politically aware and active, and individuals to step up. And I'm hoping with all of what's happened here in the recent months and last years in Australia, more and more people are starting to realize, I don't agree with that. That's not quite right. I mean, I'm a normal person. Why is this happening and I don't agree with this, Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm being naive. Maybe I'm seeing a silver lining. Maybe it's the apple juice talking, but I'm hoping more and more people will become politically active now moving forward, and will start to consider, getting involved, stepping up, maybe learning how preferences work and using them to their advantage.
Yeah.
Because so many people, you meet them, they say, I won't vote for a minor because it's a waste of a vote, and they don't understand that, how to use preferences. And it's encouraging to see that you're promoting some political activism there in normal Australians, and that's what we need. Because if normal people don't get out there and start talking and making their views heard, it's only going to be the loud, minorities that are making all the noise, and the politicians will just listen to them, and they'll think that's normal because that's all the people making all the noise. Everyone else is too busy raising their families, working, and politics is boring. No one really wants to care about it. I mean, okay, we're political nerds. I think we can agree, but the average person doesn't really care. They just want them out of their life, do their own thing, and get on with their lives.
I wasn't a political nerd. My entry into politics was a thought that maybe I might like to be on some boards and maybe even get paid for governance experience. And the advice I got at the time was, one of the things you have to have is experience. And I just got invited to be on the committee of the local LNP branch and help organise for that. And I thought, okay, well, that's probably a toe in the water, shallow end of the pool, but good place to start. That's actually how I got interested. My preconception of political branches and parties was it was a place for political nerds. And for people far intellectually superior to me, and I might not be able to keep up with the caliber of conversation. And lo and behold, I went along to my local LNP branch meeting, and it was more like a Rotary Club or a knitting circle. It was so boring, dead set boring. And that's my encouragement to everybody, is it's an average person, every man kind of meeting of people, and you just happen to be like-minded on a lot of topics. I can remember at one meeting we were actually discussing the price of postage. It was tearing my hair out. Like, come on, guys, this isn't what we're trying to fix with the world. And what,
like an old school email?
Well, that's right, old school email.
You just aged yourself here.
Well, this would have been a good 10 years ago. Might have been 2010, 2011. I'd been in for a couple of years before the 2012 election. By that time, I was chairman of the branch and then campaign director, and that was a really great experience. Before I left, went into the wilderness, got invited to join Family First, which is where you and I met when you were a candidate. But the preconception that politics is for elites makes it true. It's unfortunately true. And the way to change my local branch was to get involved. And then when I was branch chairman, I'd just invite business leaders from the community, the guy who owns the local driving school and other people, get them to come in and say, hey, what are the policies that are making your life worse? What are the policies that would make your life easier? And so we'd have a different guest speaker every month, and more people started coming to the meetings, and it went well. So Justin Robinson says, "G'day champions, here's a question for you. Have you noticed since COVID and vaccine, etc., we have heard nothing on Islamic terrorism?" That is such a good point. It was the dominant issue 10 years ago.
Well, isn't it in the news now? Apparently right-wing terrorism is the big issue. That's why. It's because it's all the right-wingers. You know, the 5 people that are LARPing in a bloody campground down in Victoria, they're the biggest threat to the nation right there. I mean,
yeah,
that's all you hear about.
And President Trump asking people to march in a political protest to the political capital. That's obviously terrorism.
I'm a bit worried now that we're going to go back to the status quo over in America. You know, instead of dropping dank memes, we're going to be dropping bombs again. And that's...
I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
But everyone will just, you know...
It's a fair worry.
Well, they'll all be happy in America. Or at least no one's feelings are hurt, except all the people that are killed all over the world for some stupid
reason. Except for the people who voted for Trump, half the population, which are now being referred to as radicalized.
Oh, it's
you vote for the Republicans, therefore you're radicalized. Well, there goes unity.
Well, they want to. There's even calls to re-educate them. Re-educate. We're in the 21st century. In America, people are calling for re-education camps. This is terrifying that this is publicly out there. And these are elected officials and you know, celebrities that no one pays attention to anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that alone, it's just, don't people know enough history to know where this type of talk and rhetoric leads to? That's the question. And I think the only way they get away with it is because most people are just chilling and trying to get along with their lives. So
yeah,
I'm hoping more activity will kind of quench that, will quell that. But, you know.
Well, I don't think Islamic terrorism has gone away. It's been pretty consistent since 633 AD.
Well, there was a website. I did there was a video I did where Koshi was laying into Hansen years ago when he was just going all tearing it to shreds, as Koshi does, and Hinch as well. Actually, I lost a lot of respect for Hinch when I saw him in Parliament. From my childhood memories, they've all been destroyed now.
He was better on TV.
Yeah, he was. And when I looked at that, I did a video about that, and there was a website I could find which had all of the terrorist attacks around the entire world, and they'd mapped it. They'd mapped them all out on the world, and you could see every single one. And well, obviously most of them were religious motivated, and a lot of them were Islamic extremists. And then there was communists. I couldn't find any right wingers, but that was, you know, it was quite a confronting resource to put out there to a lot of people that just believe the mainstream narrative. Unfortunately, it's down now. They've taken it down as a resource.
Really? Yeah. Must have been hosted on Amazon.
Yeah, probably.
So one of the things you were saying before was that you used to be an atheist and I guess refound your faith shortly before you and I met. Tell us a little bit of that. I want to know a little bit more about who Florian Heise is. Introduce him to those people who, in my audience, haven't heard of you before. And tell us a bit about your journey coming from atheism to faith, what made that happen for you. But even then, what led you to start your channel, what that's all about, and why people should tune into Heise Says.
Oh, that's a bit of a long journey. Well, one thing that you start to question things when you have children. Once you start to have a family and start to have kids, then you kind of think about what is more important. And that led me to look at, I started reading the Bible. I was reading scripture every day. I was talking to my wife about it. I was talking to my father-in-law about it. He's an ex-pastor as well. So we'd get drunk and have lots of interesting discussions. I think one of the few times he actually drinks is when he's instructed to as part of his evangelization process. So not too often, or at least that's what he tells me. He could be wrong. So I'd be just reading every day, reading the Bible every day, because I didn't really have any faith as a kid growing up. I wasn't brought up in any church, and I started. You get through half the Bible, and then you start going into different churches and looking around, and you'd feel the Holy Spirit at different ones, and you'd be going to a happy clappy church, you'd be going to a Lutheran church, you'd be going to a different version of a happy clappy church, you'd be going to a Catholic church.
Yep.
So I'd be going all around to these different ones just to see. And while I was also doing it, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos of all the different, what you call them, sometimes homilies, sometimes sermons, different type of things. So I was discovering, I was watching even some Mormon stuff. I was watching a whole lot, and it was quite interesting. And my wife was kind of along for the ride. And because she married an atheist, she was a pastor's kid.
Okay.
I think that's what they call them. And,
yep.
and I was her rebellion.
PK.
PK, yeah. I'm not up with all the lingo, And from there, then we started going to all of them, and I was reading, and I actually had a vision. I woke up in the middle of the night.
Wow.
I was overcome throughout my whole body with a sensation which I wasn't familiar with, which now I realize is the Holy Spirit. And I was instructed, you will see me again the next time. And because I'd been going to all these different churches, and I'd been having the same feeling everywhere. You'd be going to a little place in Logan up above a warehouse there with a bunch of pastors starting up a little church, and you get all these people, and you'd sense it there. You'd be going to another little church, and it's the same thing. And I went to another church after that. It felt like a used car salesman. That was the first time I didn't feel anything.
Oh, really?
And then after that, I went to a church we'd been going to, which was St. Mary's, and I felt the same thing there. So that's
in town, in Brisbane.
In Brisbane, yes.
Yeah.
And then we joined that community. And what I find is interesting, there we found, they needed our help because we're architects. So we could come in and we could provide for them. We could help them with their church, and we could make friends and that type of thing. And it's just grown from there.
Brilliant.
And the channel, it kind of came about where, business, we'd had a big project, it fell through. So I scaled back the business, and I was working from home, and I thought, because before I'd had staff, I'd have a whole team, and I'd read the news, and of course I would prattle on to them about what's this going on here, and yada yada yada. Getting angry and upset, and they'd have to listen to me because
you're the boss paying the checks.
Of course, they'd give it back to me, but still. So then I started, doing it on YouTube, and I enjoy it. It's fun. I'm going to look at the news anyway, and I discuss it. And you get a whole lot of people that are commenting and talking. You get people contacting you. So it's something I quite enjoy. I'm hoping I can, if I could get a few messages out to people. One would be financial independence, because I think here in Australia we've got no financial literacy in this country. Every time you look at an article about ABC, they're writing about some poor victim that has no money, that's doing it tough, and it's never even mentioned the idea of having an emergency fund, never having a rainy day fund. That doesn't even seem to be part of the education system anymore.
I've taught my kids in high school that their $500 bank balance should be treated as zero.
Yep. Yeah, that's the exception, isn't it? I mean, what did you get taught at school? I don't remember anything about that.
I didn't learn that in high school.
No.
I didn't think I learned that in my 20s. I'm not sure I learned it in my 30s.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You can make some stupid financial decisions when you're young. And if you learn from them, then they're valuable. It's cheaper than a university degree sometimes. Yeah. And, I'm hoping that's something that more people are becoming aware of. And I mean, because I talk a lot about the economy. I talk a lot about property. And what I've started to realize is just with housing here in this country, Australians are obsessed with housing. Our politicians are obsessed with housing, and they're just pumping it. They're just pumping that industry. Because as an architect, you'd see how much these things are built, and I'm thinking, why is it costing so much to sell, an apartment in a tower which costs hardly a third of that to build? Or, well, no. What got me annoyed?
Isn't it not because of the scarcity of land, that they just don't release enough land to create enough supply?
That's one of the reasons. It's also all of the regulations and burdens they put on you when you're building. I mean, you've got to get an energy assessment report. You've got to pay for long service leave for all the workers. You've got to have all of these insulation requirements in your buildings. You've got to jump through this hoop, this hoop, this hoop. So I'm living in a 100-year-old Queenslander, and it doesn't have any of the requirements that a contemporary building would be. And bit by bit, these little things may not sound like they're such a, increasing cost, 2,000 here, 5,000 here, 10,000 here. But overall, it really blows up and it increases the cost.
Death by 1,000 regulations.
Yeah. And then you throw negative gearing onto that, where we're all taxed to the hilt in this country, and every man and his dog will buy a property, run at a loss, and then that means more people, to mitigate their tax, and that drives up the...
People run a loss deliberately?
Negative gearing. They're running these properties, claiming the cost of the interest pretty much on it. And they'll do one after the other to mitigate their tax, and that increases the demand for these type of investment properties. So it's just the snowball effect. But long term, that means, why would you start a business here in Australia? Why would you employ someone here in Australia when you just chuck it in a house, sit on it for 5 years? If the economy looks a bit shaky, the government will just pump another home builder scheme out, or will throw more stimulus out at it. Where's the confidence in trying to deal with all the regular, the regulations, the red tape, and all the other pain you have to drum through as a businessman?
So this is Florian Heise, and the title on the screen, Heise Says, is his brand, his YouTube channel. Do you also stream to other platforms? Are you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
Mainly on YouTube.
Okay.
I've got a library account, an Odyssey account, and a BitChute account with the alternative platforms. I've got mainly on the YouTube channel though. I mean, that's where all the traffic is. Yeah. With they've got the...
While we're allowed to be there, we should be, and it's inevitable that one day we won't be.
Well, yeah, I mean that's people get upset about the deplatforming on YouTube, but you got to understand politics. It's such a tiny fraction for them. When a makeup channel can make millions upon millions of views, that's where the money is.
I think one of the most popular channels is a kid unwrapping presents.
Yeah, I want to get my 100%. Children building Lego on YouTube. You can make a living doing that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. All right, let's have a look at some of the comments. I actually want to talk about this one that Daniel said recently. Justin said he agrees, but that was a while ago, so I'm sorry I can't remember what you agree with, Justin, but thank you for agreeing. So there we go. There's probably some private chats going on. This is a good topic. Daniel Shepherd asks, the free-thinking conservatives like Craig Kelly, Cory Bernardi, Bob Day, Lyle Shelton, should they not be starting in the Liberal Party? Maybe you mean staying in the Liberal Party. But only so many, very few, can ever be successfully elected if they stand as independents, even after the public profile of being elected as a Liberal. So is starting a new party or standing as an independent of little use? My opinion is that staying in the Liberal Party is the right thing to do. That joining the Liberal Party is the right thing. Now, Florian and I met in a minor party, so I'm definitely open to the idea, and previously heavily invested in a minor party. I don't think they're a waste of time. But there's two things that have changed my mind. One is experience. I think we've given this a red-hot crack, and the definition of insanity is repeating the same activities expecting a different outcome. I don't think it's a time yet, and it might be in 10 to 20 years. I don't think it's any time soon. The second thing that really sealed that fate in the short term is the change to the legislation for minor parties, for how to vote above the line on the Senate ticket, being unable to trust a minor party with direction of your preferences. That really hamstrung the minor parties, really favoured the Greens, those incumbents who are already achieving 10% or more. That was a deal Malcolm Turnbull did with the Greens, his best friends, a big clue as to why it's insane that he was allowed to be a part of the Liberal Party. Part of the solution for that is that's not an indication that the Liberal Party is bad. That's an indication that there weren't enough sensible, right-thinking Christians in his local branch to stop him from being pre-selected and pre-selected over and over again at every election. He should have been kicked out as the left-wing tosspot that he was. So I don't think the time is now for minor parties. If your comment is about Craig Kelly, shouldn't they stay in the Liberal Party? I think, there's only so much a man can take before it's going to cost him his character And so he's probably said more and had more effect by leaving. I have no doubt that he thought long and hard about this, and this was not a tantrum. And that's why he played nice when the Prime Minister hauled him in the other day and took till now to say, look, I can't in good conscience follow your leadership anymore because that would be dishonest and a disservice to you. And so I need to sit on the crossbenches and take my chances at the next election. And I applaud that. That is what I live for. Creating the political currency, the political capital for politicians of conviction to put their conviction first and their career second, and then for us to be the people that get behind them and say, we've got your back, we're not going to leave you alone, we're going to support you, we're going to speak out for you, and we're going to donate to you, we're going to volunteer for you. So it's now up to conservatives, right-thinking people and Christians, but I repeat myself, in the seat of Hughes, in Craig Kelly's seat, to now get out and make sure he's got deep pockets for his re-election campaign, to make sure that he's got thousands of volunteers on election day, and that you're right behind his re-election, so that an independent on the crossbenches with character and conviction and Christian values gets re-elected instead of the compromised Liberal Party candidate that they pre-select in Craig Kelly's place at the next federal election.
I think we can't put all our eggs in one basket. If people are just, you'll see people who just think, well, they'll just constantly vote one party again and again and again, and they'll hope that party will solve all their problems. And it's never going to be that way. One thing for me was when I saw the cash ban debates, when all of the politicians were there giving some good debate. Well, a few of them were giving some good debates across a range of parties to an empty chamber. No one was there. And even just a few days ago, Pauline Hanson was giving a speech in the Senate to virtually empty Senate. All mentality rubbish. I would love people to start, bringing more independence in, more diversity into our chambers in the lower house and the upper house, so they actually have to talk to each other to reach a compromise. You saw there's an article about a Plibersek saying how she has no respect and doesn't even like a ScoMo. It was plastered somewhere on Twitter. I occasionally frequent Twitter for some self-flagellation, some pain, just to see the cesspool that it is. But I mean, that should be enough to completely disqualify her from leadership. If she's saying things like that about someone she's meant to work with to reach a compromise, to represent all of us.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why I would encourage people to, number one, learn our preferences, vote, and let's get a mix of people in there, because the Liberals, they're not going to solve all your problems. Labor isn't going to solve all your problems. And there's going to be some parties that come with good ideas on the table. It should all come together. I really like Palmer's idea of allowing people to write off the interest on their primary residency as a...
It's the case in America.
Yeah.
Your own mortgage is deductible.
Exactly. Pay yourself before you pay the state. That'd be a nice idea. Maybe that should be a logo. But one thing that happened...
And that's good for Australia. That's not just good for us. We're not just voting for stuff for ourselves. That's good for Australia. The more people who own their own home, the more people who don't have to face a 40-year mortgage, the more people who can be independent of government handouts, that is good for Australia. It's not good for the government when they want you dependent on them. That's the thing. I mean, I think we can applaud Kelly for stepping away when he did. I know some people are upset that he's left the Liberal Party, but he's a man of convictions. He's had enough and he's stepped away. Wouldn't you rather politicians do that than just follow the party line? Go, yes, sir, I'll do exactly what I said. I mean, that's what you get in a despotic, dictatorship. We want them to fight and argue. So we have a comment here from Advdad, and I want you to speak to this. We need to end two-party politics.
Advanced Dad, at least that's what I call him. I think that's what his name is. Okay. He's a regular on my channel, and
thanks for coming along.
Welcome. He is, I mean, that's the thing. It's people will just, I mean, I had a family member, quite a conservative Christian, and he, rather than vote for I think the Australian Conservatives here in the Queensland election to try and send a message against the Labour Party with their abortion laws. He just put LNP first because he didn't want to waste his vote. This is someone who I consider quite politically sophisticated and has an understanding of what's going on. So you're right there, mate. We need to end two-party politics. People need to, well, two things need to happen. One,
what is two-party politics to your understanding, or what's people meaning when they say that word?
Or people just simply flipping from one to the other because they're too lazy to think about it. Or they'll get in the habit of voting for the same party, or they'll vote for who their parents voted for, or they'll just, they'll believe the lies that are told about the opposite party, so they won't vote for them. Here we had the whole Medicare thing in Queensland. I mean, it's shocking some of the stuff that comes out.
He's taking a drink. Quick!
Oh,
it's
sorry.
you,
Wait,
Dave. It's you, Dave.
Talk. Yep.
I'm trying to queue up a video for a little break.
Oh, we're so well organized here. I love it. It's good. This is authentic, though. Authentic YouTube. It builds your audience rapport. They want to see the real you.
Well, you may see a dog running around. We may lose power. We've got thunderstorms over here, and my house needs rewiring.
What, you don't have solar panels? They don't work at night?
I do have solar panels.
Why aren't they working at night?
That's the problem. You may have heard the air conditioner when we first started, because we just, like I said at the beginning, if you've just joined us, it's a couple of days away from the Church and State Summit, and I am ready to put that little thing on the screen. A couple of days away from the Church and State Summit, which is an annual conference that I run for Christians. My number one goal, if there's something I would like to have achieved before I leave this world, it would be to help more Christians be more informed and more involved in politics. And if that word offends you, call it the public square or even culture. But Jesus called us to be salt and light. That is adding a flavor and being illuminating and revealing, and that is something that he asked of all of us. He also told us to love our neighbors, and that's the right reason to get involved in politics. If you're doing it because you want a tax-deductible mortgage, wrong reason. If you're doing it because you want more of your neighbors to have financial security and housing stability, that's a good reason. So get involved in policy discussions, whether or not you're a Christian, because you care about your nation and those people in it. And so the Church and State Summit is all about that. And everything I do in between Church and State Summits are about that. But if you keep covering me for a couple of seconds, I'll
I thought
grab
that
one of the trailers.
I thought that was quite unusual, that people wouldn't talk about politics at church, or you wouldn't have a pastor coming up and saying, okay, this is why you shouldn't vote for this party. Why are Christians voting for Labor here in Queensland when they want to have full-term abortions? I couldn't understand. And that was a bit of that's kind of what actually led me to run back in the day, because I wanted to vote for a party that had a pro-life platform. And I was shocked that people weren't taking that into account in their political decisions, or people weren't telling them, okay, you've got a party here that wants to, go completely against what our religion stands for. Why are you voting for them? But I guess people don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Yeah, is that the risk? Maybe they don't want the donations or to drop off, or maybe I'm being too cynical. It's the apple juice. It has to be apple juice.
I'm trying to share this with audio, but it won't unless I'm doing it in the same.
Well, I'll keep prattling on then and talking about.
Keep covering me.
I'll keep covering you. So this is a nice fine. Oh wait, it's nearly gone.
I'm sorry about that.
But no, so it's interesting to see how. Some people are afraid to talk about politics because it'll upset people, and it'll annoy friends, and I think a lot of people are enjoying the Facebook actually removing news links. I think a lot of people are loving it simply for the fact that there's no politics everywhere and they're not fighting with everyone. So it's a lot peaceful in some regards. But the danger is if you leave it like that, then you get people who are actually motivated and activated, and some of them, for the wrong reasons, are getting up there and they're getting political influence.
All right, let's have a look at a video, which I have just about got right. Share audio, share. There we go. And play.
Phase here. I wanted to let you know I'm looking forward speaking at the Church and State Summit
Can they hear us?
26th and 27th of February. I'm speaking about the influence of the Christian Church on Australia. We're often told that Australia started with convicts as a secular nation, and that's the way we've always been. Author Roy Williams has written that as a Christian, he's sick of the Christian influence in Australia being referred to as either minimal or malign. History tells us that this is not the case, that faith runs deep in our nation. Join me, either in person or online, as we explore this topic at the Church and State Summit in February.
All right, back to us. Oh, there we go. So many tabs to switch between.
You're doing a really good job. I'm impressed. Organizing all the cameras yourself.
This is the video. That's pretty good, right?
There is a great need for donations. Actually, if you'd like to support The Good Source, Pellowe Talk, my show, is part of a platform called The Good Source. And The Good Source is
looks a little basic.
Helping produce video content like this from multiple independent voices, right of Stalin in the Australian media space, because we actually are the solution to the echo chamber. The solution is to provide the alternative narrative. Some people, I think somewhat insincerely or at least unintelligently, accuse us of being an echo chamber, just another one, because we don't have a great deal of disagreement between us. But I actually resist that, and I think that's not even fair, let alone accurate, because everybody knows the other side of the argument. Everybody knows the leftist narrative, the Marxist agenda behind what's going on. You just have to watch mainstream media to hear them. It's not like their voices aren't in your head when you're listening to us. We are the people putting the balance back into the debate by being independent contributors. How can people contribute to Heise Says?
They can simply watch the channel,
and that's it.
Watch it, share it,
subscribe, share it, get it out there. We're nearly at 30,000.
Wow.
We need to get a few more subscribers.
So good.
So not bad for a much less impressive setup than you've got here.
It's all about the content.
I literally just have my standing desk, so between working, I'll just pump out a video.
I remember your standing desk from when I visited your office.
Oh, yeah. Well, these chairs cost money. Each chair's $500. If you got 10 staff, that's $5,000, and then they'll whinge because they want a nice chair. So it's
so
for
chairs
support.
Are totally verboten.
And the reason
Verboten,
I love
kind of.
Doodly is because
Here's
I
a
have
funny
to
story.
try and educate clients, and it's
We
a
have
lot
standing
more
desks at
fun
my
and easier to
office,
do
and
it
what I
using
did
Doodly.
was I
Hi,
had
I'm Ray
a
Callan, and in this video,
one of the
I'm gonna show you
requirements
how
for when you started working was you had to adjust your desk. So, and it was plywood. It wasn't, when we're saying standing desk, we're not saying a fancy, $2,000 desk. We're talking plywood screwed into another piece of plywood at the height you had. So the test was, you were handed a saw, a drill, and some screws, and you had to adjust it to the height that you wanted. And I swear there was one guy we hired, he was standing out the front of the shop with a power saw up in the air trying to cut a piece of timber like that. He didn't make a very good draftsperson when he was trying to do that.
Thank you to the people who let us know the video was still running in the background. Apologies. Hope you were able to decipher our conversation until I turned that off. Daniel Hillier says, I missed the start, and this might have been discussed, but as a Family First candidate, Florian, did you join the Australian Conservatives, and which party would you most closely align with now?
I didn't join the Conservatives. And which party would I most closely align with now?
Well, don't go on too fast. You didn't join the Conservatives.
Yes, I didn't.
Why not?
I was exhausted.
You worked really hard for your campaign.
We ran it out of my office. I asked Rachel, and Rachel said, yes, my wife. She said, yes, you could run if you don't run for one of the major two parties, because then you might get elected. So she said, yeah, you could run for a minor. I had an assistant that we'd hired for other work at the office. So she was manning the voting booth. And we drove around on the night to put signs up. you know how you actually printed, I think you organized it. This is the first time I came to your place, was to get my call flutes.
It's a secret where I live. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, of course it is a secret location.
Heart of Brisbane CBD.
Oh, yeah. That's it. It's on the top of a tower somewhere, I think. Yeah.
The basement of St. Mary's.
Yes, that's it. A bomb shelter. And so then I went around my electorate, which was Moreton, and we put signs up everywhere. Now, you wouldn't think an electorate is that big, but when you're driving it in one night, we racked up like 500 kilometers going to every single voting place to stick up one sign, just to at least put it there to let people know that I was running.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was exhausting. That was really exhausting. And on the night of the election, we kind of passed out in the office just doing it, because I had Rachel, she was manning one of the polls, I was manning another poll.
And you had 2 very young children at this stage.
Yes, we had Mina and Frederick. Mina's now 8, and she was there shaking people's hands. I think we had one person at pre-polling, was just a volunteer. We had one volunteer. That was it. And I mean, it achieved my goal. My objective was to give people an opportunity to vote for a party that has a pro-life platform.
Yeah.
I also agree with a lot of the economic principles of the Family First Party. A lot of it aligned.
I loved their tax policy. Yeah,
it aligned very much with what I still consider. I went to the...
Matt Canavan is actually speaking this weekend about one of the Family First policies, with no credit, and maybe Bob Day wasn't the first person to think of it, to be fair, but income splitting for couples.
Well, didn't that used to exist? Didn't we have that back in the day?
Maybe, but Family First really ran that up in that year. They really
it makes common sense, but I mean, in some ways you could argue that's a strategy to destroy the traditional family, because
100%.
It's a bit of a luxury having a partner staying at home.
It's incredibly Marxist. The woman must work, get out of the home and get back into the workforce, be industrial and contribute to the productivity of the nation.
Well, Rachel works. Is a housewife, but also works on projects at home too. So she's got the worst of both worlds, really.
Or the best.
Yeah, that's it. The best. Yes, the best. She doesn't work all the time. I'm not that horrible. So, I mean, we ran a pretty good campaign. I think we got I did one interview. What was interesting was the debate, because we all got up there on a debate, and the Green woman, she was a viper. She didn't like me at all, of course. We had the LNP and the LDP. They were running as well.
Making the right enemies.
That's it.
This is one of the things I love doing, is counting my enemies. And the more noxious and toxic and leftist you are, the more happy you make me feel when you attack me. I love it. Saturday, I had the Noosa Temple of Satan come out and attack me. I'm like, fantastic. Satanists are hating me. I am right on target.
Well, there's a Temple of Satan. Well, yeah, actually, it's Noosa. I'm not surprised.
It was either that or Nimbin.
Yeah, they're all stoned in Nimbin. They couldn't make the journey. I mean, that's probably un-PC these days.
Sorry to the Christians and conservatives in Nimbin. Your presence is valued there.
Are there any?
Oh, if you're in Nimbin, please say hello before you turn off.
Talk in the chats.
But yeah, you were burned out. So you didn't want to go into conservatives?
No, I didn't. I mean, the Family First brand had a level of recognition, and I was one thing I thought, okay, when they lost that, they're going to lose a whole lot of people, because it's no different to. It's the apathy of a lot of Australians, a lot of voters. Yeah. They'll just keep going for the same one. So there's some recognition there, and their mission statement was very clear in their name.
South Australia and Queensland, the brand was strong.
Yep.
Victoria, it was okay. Every other state, it was abysmal.
Really?
It wasn't a national brand. Australian Christians are a identical party in Western Australia. Very strong branding over there. It made sense for us to give all our preferences to them and make them number one in Western Australia, the party to hold the majors accountable.
Yep.
In Queensland, South Australia, it was Family First. But yeah, I think the Conservatives had the opportunity to be a national brand, which is, I guess, my reasoning for throwing in with them at first. Was there anything about the party other than, was it mostly that you were just exhausted?
I was exhausted, and I mean, we were also, I'm just thinking back then, we were growing our family and our business. I mean, then we had 2 kids. Now we've got 5.
Wow.
So it's
So
been quite a journey over the last few years. You know, we bought a house that we bought it, and I had an engineer look at it, and he said, "You got 1 year before it falls over." So that's 7 years ago, and now we're finally fixing it. That's the old story. So I mean, we've had a lot on in the last few years.
Yeah.
And you know, which party? I wouldn't actually align with a party now more these days, because they're all going to disappoint me one way or another. To be honest,
100%.
I would more advocate that people look at the candidates in your local area and throw your vote, even if you don't think they've got a chance of getting in. Use your preferences, support even a minor if they're representing something that you advocate for, that you would be happy to get up there. More so in the Senate too than in your local seat. That's what I would encourage people for. I mean, even if we have a mix in the houses, that's what I would hope for, because if you put all your hope in one party, you're going to get disappointed, because it's no different than anything else with a bunch of people in it.
Yeah.
So
let's have a look at some more comments. So we started with
I didn't really answer that one.
No, you did. You did well. And the answer is no party.
Yeah, no
and
party.
And I say the same. I am not loyal to any party or politician or even a platform. As a Christian, this is my conviction, is that we need to be 100% loyal to Jesus Christ, to God, and that's it. And so I am an undecided voter, and I encourage you to be an undecided voter. If you can't say you're religiously devout and hold the Bible as authoritative for your life and for a flourishing society, then pursue justice and truth, and let that be your guide, and let that be your compass, and be an undecided voter. And then come election time, you choose what you think are the major issues facing our country, and in your electorate, you find a candidate who will support those issues. Now, for me, I'm with Florian. Life is the deal breaker issue until we end any such thing as a pro-abortion candidate. We did it in the 1700s, 1800s. We abolished slavery. It took a generation, but the Church of England was heavily invested in in plantations where slave labor was the key source of labor. Slavery was entrenched and as socially acceptable as abortion is now. And over a generation, not an election cycle, you have to have an appetite for patience. Over a generation, it was progressively ratcheted back until slavery was abolished, and now try and find me a pro-slavery candidate. Well, that's what I want. That's what I want for my generation.
You're right on the money there. It's a slow boil. I mean, the left have done the march through the institutions for decades, and that's why they've gotten that's why people are talking about democratic socialism like it isn't insane these days, because they've worked hard.
Which is only socialism you voted for.
Well, yeah, I mean, before you have to get the rifles to shoot your way out.
Instead of revolutionary socialism.
Yeah, that's it. It's the slower burn of it. They've learned. They've stuffed up the first time. So, I mean, you're right. There has to be a slow change, and some people can get disheartened because they can feel like they're making no progress. I mean, one thing with the abortion that we've had a personal experience with, our last child, he was born with Down syndrome.
Wow.
And we went and did the test, because they test every child here in Australia, in Queensland. They do a prenatal test, with the ultrasound. They'll scan for the amount of liquid at the back of the neck.
Okay.
And then they'll give you an invasive test later on. But you're talking like 15 weeks in. So when people are saying a 2-week abortion for a medical condition or for Downs, this is like 15 weeks in. And then what's even sadder in some regards is then when you have the baby and he's going around doing all these things, he's getting annoyed by his siblings. He's a normal kid. He may be a bit slower than other children. He may not be.
How old is he now?
He's 8 months.
Okay.
Yes. Or 10 months. Rachel's not watching. I won't get in trouble. One thing that was surprised me was they don't have the muscle fibers of normal people. That's why a lot of the strength isn't there. So they have to work a lot harder to move around. But other than that, he's a normal, happy little child. And I think in many ways, people are just scared of the unknown. I think that's what a lot of these issues are coming down. We've got all the people who are advocating for taking our rights away because they're terrified of of the pandemic. You've got governments implementing all these restrictions because people are terrified. You've got people aborting babies because they're scared of that their life's over, or that, you know, this child is going to end my life, when they're just scared of the unknown. They're not willing to step up to the responsibilities that will come with that. So sometimes those are the challenges you need to embrace to grow as a person. So if anything, that's really rammed home the how down T21, the PC version, or probably the clinically correct version of saying it, they're facing a genocide now. There's some countries where they're not born anymore.
Was it Sweden?
I think
Denmark? One of the
Iceland.
And
okay. Or probably all of them, to be honest. And you don't see them anymore, hardly ever. When I was at school, they were around.
No, some of the Norse countries are very Christian values, very family focused.
And how can you be getting these outcomes if you've got, you know, you're claiming family, you're claiming this, and in some that's made it even sadder to me. So people are doing that.
I did say I was going to have a look at some comments, and then I enjoined your. I didn't answer that question. No, you did really well. Closely aligning to a party isn't a good idea.
Yeah, you'll get your hopes will be dashed. Look at all of them and pull them apart.
You know what? I will get to the comments, but first, more tangents and rabbit trails. I accept that it's fair and accurate to use labels, as much as we might resent them. I don't like the label conservative or right wing, but that is a fair and accurate generalization of my position.
Well, no. You'll be centre. It's just the Overton window has shifted so far left. Your opinions are now considered. I mean, look at.
No, the Overton, different. Another topic, maybe in 5 minutes. But I choose to be Christian. I'm coincidentally conservative. I don't try to be right, as in versus left. I try to be right as opposed to wrong. And so if there's a left-wing position that's right, I'm happy to own it. I'm happy to change to it. You just need to persuade me. I'm open to facts, evidence, data, and logic. I'm not trying to be conservative or right-wing or liberal party. I'm trying to be Christian and follow God. And that means truth, justice, objective morality. And these are the values that I want for my nation. And whatever that means. And so when we're talking about housing policy or lanes on the freeway or marriage and abortion, I want to know what God's side is. God doesn't take sides, but I want to be on his side. So I applaud that. I don't need a party. I don't want to be on a party. I'm undecided at every election.
You'll find there's one guy who actually started up a party, and he was looking for exposure. So he contacted me. And so I said, okay, come on tonight. He wanted to run it for the last Queensland election, so he needed to get enough signatures. So I interviewed him on my channel. And he was the typical type of person that had never been politically active in his entire life. But what he saw happening got him so annoyed and so angry, he decided to take action. And his first action was to jump in and start a party. You'll find a lot of people want to start a party.
That's a rare first action.
Well, yeah, I know. He actually went through, he did the paperwork, he got a constitution, he created a website. He didn't get enough signatures, but he was politically motivated. I'm thinking a lot of people are becoming politically motivated. You saw the mother who got arrested down in Victoria for trying to organize a rally.
Yes,
there.
The Facebook arrest.
Yeah, the Facebook arrest. That she was politically motivated. So, even if you become politically motivated and you can find a candidate that has the balls, like Kelly, is that Craig Kelly, to leave his party when they start to put the thumb on him and put the Gestapo boot on his throat to stop him talking. You want a candidate that will do that, and that may be hard to find in some parties. Some of them will just go for the ride. I mean, because what do they do? Some of them work hard, but a lot of them sit on committees, and that's not real work compared to another job. I mean, maybe I'm being unfair now to politicians. I'm sure they work very hard. Very hard. If you're listening.
The promised comments. Michael Donnelly. The governments of Western countries appear to be using coronavirus to develop policies that are biased against Christian religious gatherings and anti-Christian, pro-atheism, pro-socialist/communism. Ben says, you could be communist and want everybody to be equally poor. Pip says, seems there's very little difference between LNP and ALP. Then there's their cheerleaders, seconds, NP and Greens. Just like a dog chasing its tail, it's taking up time and space while achieving zip for us. D. Hawkins says, what? This is amazing. Hello, Florian, my favorite YouTuber. Love hard eyes. Brett Clark, we need to get people to be more independent, looking after themselves and not being dependent on government. Amen, Brett. The government should get out of my life. Small government. Double amen.
Caretaker government. That'd be nice.
Lano Mac, surprised to see Florian here. Great crossover. I didn't expect to see. Ingrid, well said. Apologies, that was 20 minutes ago.
Oh, so well.
YouTube official, Pellowe and Heise, aka the Dream Team. We're going to start cheesy high-fiving soon. And then there's a couple of comments about the video in the background. Where was that comment? I just pressed something on, and there we go. That was the question we just finished spending 15 minutes discussing. Yeah, no, you asked it twice. There we go. D. Hawkins, I wish Florian would go back to 5 videos a day. Those were the glory days.
You talk to Rachel, okay? Ask Rachel. Yeah, that's. I tried a YouTube experiment. We're doing the shorts.
Yeah.
You know, these little 1-minute videos.
Okay, great.
It failed.
Okay.
I lost subscribers for 2 days. And I think it annoyed people. Rachel suggested, well, because I've been asking polls of people and getting their responses, so I've tried to condense that into a 1-minute poll.
I need to hang out with you more.
Well, Rachel,
you've done all the research. I don't need to.
Oh well, no, that's I'll tell you which YouTuber to follow. Rachel suggested I take my rants, because there's some videos where I get a little bit heated and just snip out the good bits of those and put those in 1-minute shorts. Because some YouTubers are getting like 30,000 views from a little short, and their channels are exploding. It's getting them exposure.
Wow, good.
So that's I think I'll try that. I'll get the rants where I'm getting angry.
I'm producing too many people. I need to dump them all.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm producing multiple shows and don't have time to edit my own to finesse and market it.
Well, I don't do any editing. That's what.
How do you do the shorts then?
Oh, I'll have to do
Right.
the editing now. That's what
I thought that you were saying that was successful for you.
No, that's what I'm going to try to do. Maybe if you could find like little snippets, you know, where you have a well-known person that's getting angry over something or getting fired, just take that 1-minute bit out and spit it out there.
Oh, okay.
Because that's just going crazy now on YouTube.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Donnelly says Corey had a voice in politics and now Sky News, but the Australian Conservatives received a very small percentage of votes at the last election. Michael, 100%. And that's why I think we have given this a red-hot crack, probably for a couple of decades, certainly the last 10 years. Australian Conservatives went to town. Family First went to town. We really did. We threw everything in the kitchen sink at it, and it didn't work. Malcolm Turnbull conspired against us. That's not a theory. That's a matter of public record. He joined up with the Greens and changed the voting rules to disembowel any influence and collective power that minor parties had, and the ship has sailed. So we either need to change the voting rules back to enable uninformed, uninterested, lazy voters to delegate their power of preference flows to their preferred party, which I think is legitimate and fine. If you trust the party to choose your preferences for you, that's a valid decision. I don't think it's your best decision. I think it's a lazy decision, but most people were making it. And, I know as far as Family First preferences were concerned, we did our best to maximize the influence of our supporters. And that wasn't always the most perfect meshing of values. It was about maximizing influence. What can we do with horse trading to get better policy outcomes? And so sometimes that wouldn't look like we're preferencing first, second, and third, the people first, second, and third closest to us. Sometimes it would look like we're going to achieve this negotiation behind the scenes to achieve a preferred outcome in policy and legislation for you by preferencing our third or fourth. We preferenced the Glenn Lazarus party at one stage.
Okay.
Not a great alignment on values, but a great outcome for people who wanted legislative outcomes for us. And and that's something that's hard to explain, and I don't want to get, I guess, bogged down in that. But again, if people want to trust you to take the power of their influence and use it for political negotiations, that is a power that is very useful to minor party supporters.
I think we're very fortunate here in Australia with our electoral system. The fact that we have preferences, the fact that you can even have minor parties and that they can get some, funding, and then they can stand and they can represent you, compared to some other countries. The fact that here in Australia you can't waste your vote. The biggest challenge is...
Well said.
Yeah. The biggest challenge is getting people riled up and excited. Because, I mean, okay, you get the hot dog. I remember when I was standing to vote and some guy was saying, oh, it's pointless. You know, the rich just get richer, the poor just get poorer. And it's sad hearing that stuff.
Which is ignorant.
Well, people are giving up. You don't want people to give up and have no hope, because then the standard two will win. It's going to be the same back and forth over and over again.
Yeah,
that's not what you want.
D. Hawkins says, I never knew you ran as a Family First candidate. There you go. Is that one of your regulars?
Yes. How are you going? Welcome. She has I'm assuming it's a she.
D as in Deanne or D as in David?
Dave. Or, well, it could be.
Daniel.
Dennis. Bar and hotelier over
Denise.
in WA.
Oh,
it's interesting hearing some of the stories there of just trying to get staff and how hard it can be.
Yeah.
There with
blessed job seeker.
Oh, well, a number of people want cashies.
Oh,
you know,
really?
and yeah, I mean that's a tough game. That is a real tough game, being in that. I mean, the retail these days, owning a coffee shop now with the threat of government lockdown every 2 weeks.
What a sovereign risk.
You know.
It's like owning a coal mine in Australia.
Well, these calls useful. Don't worry. There'll be all the bladding and noise, but at least...
Are you implying coffee's not useful?
Coffee is useful, but I'm comparing it to solar. You know, your solar panels aren't generating power for us here. He's got his kids out the back on a bike, I swear, right now.
Daniel Shepherd says, quote, only if you stand for a minor party, because then you won't get elected, end quote. Rolling on the floor, laughing, tear face. Exactly my question earlier. So better for people to start with one of the two major parties, even if they feel the need to leave later then. You have more chance of being part of a party in government or opposition if you join a minor party. You have very remote chance of getting elected to the crossbenchers in a minor party or as an independent. There are other reasons and other things you can achieve, and I wouldn't condemn anybody supporting or standing for or in a minor party. Again, part of my doctrine that I teach, political doctrine, not theological doctrine, is follow God. You do what you think is best to do. And I think it's the same as the Allies in World War II fighting an axis of evil. There was the Western Front, there was the Eastern Front, there was, you know, battles going on everywhere. And they were all allies, all on the same team. They didn't have to be in the same trench to be useful. So, you know, do what you do and let's debate about it and talk about where the best strategy is and then make your decision and be there. But the question is it more useful? And my 2 cents is, yeah, join a major party. Join a major party, not even as a candidate, but as an influencer. You know, Craig Kelly nearly didn't win his last pre-selection. He needed the Liberal Party to come in and do some kind of support for him because of the challenge. We've just seen Kevin Andrews lose his pre-selection in Victoria for the next federal election. Erica Betts is facing some challenges. And there's always going to be contests between good people and challengers. And I welcome the contest. I think the contest is good for democracy. It's good for the party. There should be a contest between 3 or 5 really high caliber candidates. But quite often it's a contest between a good candidate and 2 or 3 clowns. And that's when you need to be in the party so that you can be one of...
Keep the clowns.
Kick the clowns out and go for the good candidate.
Turnbull a clown?
Turnbull's actually a clown. He's got Ronald McDonald shoes. I checked. And you need to be in a major party to have a chance of influencing those pre-selection outcomes.
Well, it's interesting you're saying that. There's a post doing the rounds.
You've had dinner. This is mine.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, you haven't eaten, haven't you?
Mentos.
Oh, yeah, well, your apple juice will keep you going. Apple juice and Mentos.
That's right.
There's a post doing the rounds about a young Republican looking at joining the party for a change over there in the States and getting in the GOP, and how little people are involved, and how you could actually branch stack it, how you can get more people involved and more power and more influence about it. I mean, and that's another thing. If if you have a particular political motive that you want to advocate for, it's like anything, step up and get involved. And even joining a party, if you have enough people with sensible thinking, we might be able to shift the dialogue. So, controversial topics now won't be considered controversial in a few years' time. You've got people out there that are looking at what's happening around the country, and they're going, why is all this craziness going on? It's because all the nutters are making the noise, and all the sensible, the quiet majority, as they call it, are sitting on their asses and not really doing anything.
Yeah. D says, I was a member of the Australian Conservatives too. There's now a whole group of us who are friends from our involvement in the party who have nowhere to go. You have somewhere to go. Take your group, join the Liberal Party. On the application, when they ask you why are you joining, the answer is to defeat Labor. And then be missionaries in the Liberal Party to make it better. Don't join the Liberal Party because you think it's perfect and it represents you. Otherwise, you'll never join any party. Join the Liberal Party because you want to make it better. Add your strength to the party. And look, if you're a Labor voter, thank you for watching, and join the Labor Party for the same reason. Make it better.
I'd want sensible people in Labor. Labor have some good policies. They've got some social justice policies that are just utterly bonkers.
There's no such thing. It's justice.
Oh, well, okay. They believe in the gender wage gap. They think that's reality.
Sorry, you're right. You did say the right thing. Social justice.
Yeah.
In their context,
it's insane.
I'm a fan of. Sorry for the tangent.
I've got you triggered. Should I do a trigger warning?
Trigger. There's no such thing as social justice unless you're trying to there's no such thing as homosexual marriage.
Isn't that mob justice? Social justice.
If you need an adjective to modify justice, you have diminished justice.
But if you. What I'd love to see is you get people that are sensible in both parties, in the two major ones, so then we can go back to the days where the parties actually negotiated with the other, where someone who, like Plibisek, is going in media saying she hates the opposition leader is turfed out because that's not going to be conducive to a dialogue, to build the country up. It's just going to be more fighting between the two of them, and then more people. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's the strategy. They're just going to be a bunch of clowns fighting with each other, so no one thinks it's important, we don't care, and we just all step back. So they just keep doing the same thing again for years. We've discovered it. We need the tinfoil hats.
Yeah. Bieber Anti-Bullying says, go to the gym and get some testosterone. I have no idea what that's about. My body.
You got to lift weights. That's on my list.
Been there, done that, and would like to do it again.
Go the carnivore diet. Trust me.
Oh, I'm so
keen. Steak every day. Do it for a month. Just do it for a month.
I mean,
seriously, I'm not kidding. Try it for a month.
I would love to. Yeah. I'm not kidding. Not sure I can afford steak 3 times a day.
Oh no, one a day. Just have one meal a day. Go OMAD with steak once a day. Have a big one, like half a kilo.
Oh, hello.
Get the tallow. Cook up the tallow. Maybe a bit of salt.
Welcome to Cooking with Florian.
Well, if you're interested in looking how to store a fully purchased cow, right? There's a video on our channel where Rachel explains how she orders it.
Serious?
Yeah, how she orders it, packages it, and puts it all in the freezer.
Super cool.
Because now we're living in a rental.
I have got Buckley's chance of getting my wife on my channel.
Well, I was sick, so Rachel did it.
That's so cool.
She did it, and
sick or not. It's me or nobody.
Yeah. And we find it's a lot cheaper. You save a lot of money if you buy a whole beast, and you get really good cuts of food.
Wow.
Because right now we're living in a rental. We're buying.
We've got so much we could talk about endlessly.
Yeah, that's it. You got to come back in a week's time with the guns, with a month of carnivore.
I love it. Cycladelic says Nimbin, anti-vax capital of Oz. And D. Hawkins says the problem is conservatives are too busy raising families and having careers to get too involved in politics. Absolutely, and they're also the reason why we should get involved in politics.
It really feels like it when you go to an event and you see all these lefties. That I mean, you look at. Okay, I'm going to be really unpolite. You got the champagne socialists that just will vote for all the nice things, and they won't feel the consequences of it because they're probably isolated from the impacts that some of these legislations will have on a lot of people, or they won't realize that what they're voting for, it'll take years for these problems to manifest in the economy and to cause all these issues. They'll just vote for the feel goods now and not realize, okay, we're creating all these issues that are going to manifest in 10, 20 years time. So, but
Beaver says abolishing slavery worked well, didn't it? Well, I'm not sure of a Western nation that has legalized slavery. And of course, there's a black market for everything illegal.
Even here in Australia, even here in Brisbane.
Oh, of course, it's huge.
Yeah.
Gold Coast, yeah. D says there's 80,000 abortions in Australia every year. Imagine how many less immigrants we'd need to import if we stopped women aborting their babies. Yep. Good.
That's really, really sad.
80,000 is conservative. Could easily be over 100. Am I wrong here? Daniel says, but is One Nation the only party with electoral prospects with an anti-abortion platform?
Are they anti-abortion?
Yeah, they came out pretty strong in the Queensland election just recently. Very, very strong policy, but essentially due to the daily COVID announcements, there was very little media space for anything else.
Oh, because I hadn't heard that. That's okay.
Exactly right. Well, you would have if you watched Pellowe talk.
Oh, sorry. I'm busy producing content.
I think I actually had Pauline on to talk about it.
Okay.
Not bragging or anything,
I'll have to watch it. That's good. That's. I mean, One Nation has a lot of sensible policies. The media portrays them
it wasn't a perfect one.
Yeah.
But it was far stronger than any other party. It was actually pro-life.
Yep.
With room to grow. And you know what? To your point, Daniel, is One Nation the only party with electoral prospects with an anti-abortion platform? Probably the way you worded it, yes. But the LNP actually made a commitment at the election to review the extreme measures of the Labor Party's abortion liberalisation legislation. And that was a bold step forward for them. Also, to your point, to your question, George Christensen is about to publish some really great pro-life policy, which is very clever, very strategic. And he's another one, like Craig Kelly, at great risk of being alienated from the Liberal National Coalition because of his convictions and the party's willingness to compromise when demanded by the lefties. But that legislation is something that we should be getting behind and offering full support. Members, viewers in Dawson, become members of the Liberal Party to make sure that George Christensen, of the National Party, LNP, to make sure George Christensen is never at risk of losing his pre-selection.
How many people are in some of these parties?
In the branches?
Well, yeah. How many in a branch?
It could come down to, well, easily one vote. Now,
so if you had like 10 mates that all agree with you the same, and you said, "Okay, come on, boys,
it would be.
We're gonna try and make an influence here." Would that be enough to sway?
Yes.
You reckon?
Yeah. The average party branch is going to be 30 to 50 people turning up at a pre-selection.
Well, see, that's what isn't that what all the
maybe 100.
What the Labor guys do down in Victoria? They branch stack it all and they get all there.
Oh, look,
or is that something different?
Do not branch stack. Branch stacking is where somebody will get 10 of their mates, pay for their fees.
Oh, paying for them.
Pay for their fees and get their proxy votes.
Oh, okay.
And then hand in 10 votes.
That's a complete joke then. That's
follow the rules. Pay for your own fees. Join the party for your own reasons. Consult widely and make your own voting choices for office holders and pre-selections, etc. But birds of a feather flock together. There's nothing to stop Conservatives in a branch or in a party saying, who do we like? We've got two Conservatives and two pseudo Liberals. Let's decide who we think is going to be the best. That's fine. That's not branch stacking. That's representation. That's democracy. But join your party, and you might have to go twice a year It's not going to change your life or become a huge burden. You just have to follow the rules to stay constitutionally entitled to vote. You may even have to wait 1 to 2 years before you're entitled to vote in a pre-selection. And it might cost you $80 a year. But join the party and get in so you can support good people when they're up, and so you can fire the whatever member is in there when they stop doing a good job. They work for us. They need our support. And sometimes a good boss is a boss that's prepared to say, you're not working out, see you later.
Oh yeah, they are our servants, aren't they?
That's the theory. Pip says, be the light and the room will never go dark. Right on schedule. 20 minutes ago. We're slowly catching up with the comments. Snippets can be crowdsourced. Nick Fuestes has done that very well with America First. Just give your audience the okay.
Okay. That's the shorts thing where you ask your viewers to get the best bits, and then you can share them out.
Geez, I would love that if people would help. It'd be fantastic. Thank you. ScoMo, covering for banks, LNP not perfect, Catholics protecting workers traditionally, but Labor and unions gone woke, so God help white, straight, conservative, working class males. Talking about me, white, straight, conservative, working class male, but I have my victim identity points. Roughly 200 years ago, Thomas Pellowe was taken captive by Muslim pirates off the coast of Cornwall and enslaved for decades as a very young man.
When are you getting your compensation?
I don't know. I've asked the Muslim corsairs' descendants for compensation, recompense. I've also asked Britain for compensation because they dispossessed my Scottish ancestors.
Yep.
They just totally took the land off them and said, bugger you.
Well, I'm not sure which, because I've got Austrian and German heritage. I don't know which country I need to pick in the Prussian-Austrian War, to who destroyed my homeland.
Which one's richer right now?
Yeah, you're right. Who's got more money?
David Burkett's watching. Florian, do you engage your community architects toward politics? Hi, David.
Hey, how you going? I don't hang out with architects.
There's only one architect on the jobs you work on.
Yeah, there is. But no, it's Rachel and I. Architects are notoriously, in my experience, a lot of them are very left-leaning. I remember I sat in a meeting with another architect across the table, and we both actually ran for politics. We both actually ran for a party.
Wow.
They're all greens. They're all greens. They're all green. They're all hippie greens. And I remember back at uni, we were.
It's because they're all the inner city.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yodels.
I went to the factory for some
Yodels.
builders, and all the guys there were like putting gel and products in their hair. And I'm the architect. I'm meant to be the stereotypical Nancy boy. What are you doing with? I don't have to worry about it. But what are you doing with all that stuff? But at university, we were really, really indoctrinated with a lot of the greenwashing, really hard, and a lot of socials. And we had this one subject which I found fascinating and really fantastic. It was an old hippie, and he was talking about global systems, global ethics, and they wanted to use that to for us to develop a global ethical system to justify our final design project. Because in our masters or mine was a bachelor's, now it's a master's, you get to design whatever you want, and you have to make an argument for it. So I used that to develop an ethical compass. So my argument could be, any type of project could be morally just if it meets certain criteria, and you pull it apart and dissect it. I could say you could do a nuclear power plant because you can provide cheap energy to all these people, or something more mundane. You could even do a shopping center in a certain area because it'll create all this employment. So my idea was, if kind of just deconstructing the narrative they were doing, the greenwashing, because everyone else just did a bloody farm in the city, a sky garden type of thing to grow veggies. But I was saying, no, it needs to be a way to develop you need to develop a professional moral compass about where you want to do a project. And I did quite well. I got a HD on the subject, and the next year I was brought back to tutor. But then they brought another guy in, and he wasn't the same as the previous guy. He was just really
lecturer.
No, a graduate. He was really ramping home the whole embodied energy and carrying capacity. There's this whole argument that a certain area of land is what's needed to support a human being. So, if you live, you use so much petrol and energy, so you need this many square kilometers of coconut plantation, all this stuff. And that was what he was just really emphasizing on. And
Was he leaning towards overpopulation arguments?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was embedded through all of this. The whole
and these people haven't heard of Malthus?
Well, one thing that concerned me was with the students.
The Industrial Revolution happened, people. This argument is dead.
But the thing that really concerned me with the students, which is the takeaway I got from it, was that they wouldn't question anything that was put to them by the lecturers. They wouldn't challenge it.
What a failed lecturer.
In architecture, you present your work and you can do whatever you want as long as you can argue it. You can argue it because you've got 3 people sitting in front of you, 3 or 4 people that will tear your work to pieces, and you need to be able to defend it. And that's good. It's conducive. And I'd be talking to these students going, well, this is what she's saying. Have you pulled apart what the lecturer is saying? There's one lecturer would make an argument about embodied energy, which is a concept. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that in a moment. An argument about embodied energy to build these buildings. And the student just blindly follows what the lecturer is. And none of them were actually brave enough to challenge what was put to them by the lecturers. And that got me so stressed and so angry. It really disappointed me because that was the whole point of that subject, was to question and challenge and to think critically about it. But I had all these kids that were just blindly saying, oh, that's what the lecturer said, that's what the lecturer said. And they wouldn't pull it apart or wouldn't look at anything.
Wow. You wanted to talk to me about embodied energy?
Well, you're familiar with the concept of embodied energy and embodied carbon, aren't you?
No.
You're not?
No. I haven't heard that term before.
Embodied energy. See, this is the thing. I think this is a normal topic. Well, no, I think this should be common knowledge. This needs to be taught. Well, 2 things people need to learn is opportunity cost and embodied energy or carbon. So say today someone shared a post of this new Beyond Meat stuff that all the vegans are eating. So they're hoping that they can save the planet to eat it. Now you can either buy a grass-fed cow here in Australia, slaughtered locally, and it's got very low carbon. It's in the production of it. You can eat it. You can be healthy. You can buy this Beyond Meat that's made in the US. So you can buy this factory manufactured, made out of all these plants that are all grown in the fields. There's all that energy used to create that, to transport that, to manufacture that, to ship it over here to Australia, and then to refrigerate it and store it in the fridge here. And if you compare the embodied energy of these 2 things, one of them is going to have a much higher level of energy in the production of it than the other. So when people are thinking they're being good for the environment doing one thing, they're not actually. The same thing goes to solar panels, the energy that it takes to make those. I
was going to say that's an argument that I'm familiar with without being familiar with the term.
With the term, yeah.
That the environmental friendliness of solar panels and wind power are just a joke compared to what they're arguing is the reason for favouring these energies.
Well, I think it's because people don't understand. I mean, there's everything in here, your studio lights or your timber that you've got there. The fact that you've got recycled timber, that means you're getting it's actually more environmentally beneficial than using some alternative newer timber because you're giving it a new lease on life. You're being a hippie here.
We actually call it the Thunberg studio because the timbers are environmentally friendly and slightly stressed.
Well, it looks good. It looks very classy. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's still got some work to do, some staining, but yeah, a big thank you to the Good Source supporters for making this happen. We've built this on the smell of an oily rag, and I've heard of other studios which have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and have less versatility than we've managed here.
Well, you've got there's some advantages to doing it a bit more, independently. You can kind of be a bit more adventurous. You can be a bit braver in how you do things. I think that adds to the charm of it.
Well, maybe this will impress the architect in you, and if it doesn't, don't tell me. But because we're 6 by 4 meters, every single square inch has to be maximized in its potential utility. So the lights are currently on tripods, but we're not far away from installing some custom-made rails so that the lights can be moved up and down and around from the ceiling in any position that we need. And at that point, we're going to be able to have the studio pointing in any direction on 4 different walls so that it will have, again, maximum kind of variation and versatility in its backgrounds.
Nice.
The green screen will get better curtains one day, but it's a green screen. We're not curtained, and so back on track, embodied energy is less because it's recycled timber getting multiple uses.
Yes, I mean that's one example with it, and it'd be everything like like using a glass. You'll have everyone will be against plastic because you're using plastic and you're creating all the waste and all of this. But the lifespan of an average glass, when you take that into account, you could use hundreds of cups before you get the same amount of energy in one of these. So people are advocating for these emotionally based positions or these interventions. Yeah,
I would have thought that a glass was more environmentally friendly than a paper cup.
You've got to clean it. To clean it, you've got to heat the water, and you've got to put the detergent in it, and you've got to do all of that. So a plastic cup, you can drink it, then you can reuse it, you can recycle it if you need to. I mean, that's the type of thinking that I think needs to be part of the common knowledge of people, the embodied energy of these things. Because then when you start seeing these people advocate for these environmentalist positions, you can go, well, okay, what's the embodied energy of your suggestion to another? We're importing wind turbines manufactured over in Germany, taking them down to Victoria, installing them there. Every time I look at it on the website where I can see the energy productions, they're barely at 30% utility. We've got all this gas in the Bass Strait that you could use. You could buy off-the-shelf turbine that can be used to generate power.
Uranium?
Well, yeah. That's
coal.
One of the safest energy production method in the world is uranium, but everyone's terrified of it because they're scared of the boogeyman.
Absolutely no reason whatsoever. Let's move to some more of these comments. Thank you, David. You've distracted us for a good 10 minutes there. Slavery was the driver for the coronavirus plague, which began in Italian sweatshops that used Chinese labor from Wuhan, housed in cramped, unsanitary conditions for many. Look, Senator, when I say we've abolished slavery, it's in law. The point is probably best made. There's no such thing as a pro-slavery candidate. Nobody's going to come out on their political platform and say, I'm all for slavery. We need more human trafficking. That's the kind of culture change I'm looking for in the abortion industry, that it is an election loser to be pro-abortion. And so the number one test I have for any candidate, for my electorate, I don't care about the parties. I ask the candidates, will you fight against abortion if it comes up in debate in Parliament? I'm not interested in what you believe. I'm not interested in what your party believes. I want to know how you will vote on the floor of Parliament, because that's what I will hold you to. I don't care if you agree with me. I want you to represent me. We can have a discussion, but when they're answering questions from I'm getting sidetracked. When we're answering questions from a electorate, you're getting 1,000 emails. You're not going to have a debate with every single person. I just need a yes or no answer. Are you going to fight against abortion or not? And here's the thing. If they have 1,000 emails asking them if they're going to fight against abortion,
it'll come top of
that will register more than one person arguing really well.
You're right.
The logic, the ration, the reason doesn't matter. What matters is political currency, their career. 1,000 votes, 1,000 donors, 1,000 volunteers. Now you're talking political influence for changing a nation.
I think people would be surprised how little people you'd need to kind of shift some politicians.
Totally. But as to slavery, human trafficking is the second fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. So I'm not unconcerned about slavery. Pip, Aussies really don't get preferential voting. Oh, tell me about it. And are also confused about the differences between US voting for President, Prime Minister and Australian voting for local members, in my opinion. 100% Pip. One of my most popular topics on YouTube is how preferences work. Nico Greco says, Heise, thumbs up, Rocket, thumbs up. Michael Donnelly.
He's trapped in Victoria right now.
I'm sorry. Hopefully you have some good friends you can influence to vote against it. 70% popularity while being an idiot.
Hey, no, lockdowns work. They get you re-elected.
They do. Michael Donnelly, the corruptness of the major parties have made one nation palatable. If not corruptness, then compromise, certainly. LNP bought and paid for. We'll take that as a comment. Government wants to undermine our cohesion by continuously making our society broader and shallower, divide and conquer on a societal level. Well, I think government, that might be a bit too broad a statement. If you said leftists, Marxists, socialists, progressives, yes.
Well, it feels like that's all a government at the moment now, because the difference between the two parties
fair.
is shrinking. So you can see where he's coming from. It really...
I think it'd be fair to say government wants us to be entirely reliant on them.
I think the bureaucrats are the biggest issue.
Yeah.
You've got a whole culture in there.
If Abetz Andrews Kelly are being driven out of the Libs, it is being taken over by the moderate faction. Look, that is history. That's the status quo. What we have to do is imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. It worked. They have done it. So let's beat them. That's what we've been saying tonight. Join the Liberal Party, infiltrate them back, and just say, hey, I'm here to play by the rules just like you. Let's beat Labor. And the way to do that is to advocate Christian values or traditional Australian values, if you prefer. Anita says democracy is dead. Oh, Anita, so cynical.
That's the problem, where people lose hope and then they can't be bothered engaging. If that happens even more and more, you're going to have... Nothing will change.
You know, the reason, if democracy is dead, it's because the demos, the population, has become, what's the opposite of virtuous? Unvirtuous? You get my point.
Slothful.
You get my point. Democracy only works with a virtuous society, and we have become hedonistic and egoistic, which is a new word I read recently. Not egotistic, egoistic describes Satanists. They claim to be and celebrate being egoistic, which means not concerned with others, all about yourself, promoting your own self-interests. And that's why pork barreling works. When a politician promises you, we're going to do this for your sporting club or something, it's like, but what about the fact you're killing 100,000 people a year in abortion clinics? I don't care about how many footballs we have. That's not going to change the nation. Slaughtering innocent living humans, that's something I'm concerned about. So if we stop being egoistic and start being virtuous, then democracy will work again. I haven't got past your first three words, Anita. Democracy is dead. The historians will say that democracy and universal suffrage was a bizarre social experiment of the 20th century that failed slightly after. YouTube official, perhaps conservatives and right-wing voters need to throw support behind One Nation despite it being a vanity project for Pauline Hanson. Harsh. Again, my thought for the, I was going to say night, but it's actually the thought for my career is don't ever throw your support behind a party. Find the best candidate in your electorate and support them. It might be a different party each time. I can honestly say the last two elections, the best candidate, not the last election, the second last election, I voted for One Nation candidate. And the most recent election, they didn't have the best candidate. A change depending on who's going to be the strongest pro-life candidate.
Yeah, you don't want to put, if you, there's some people that will say, in the comments, I'll on the videos, they'll say, I'd never vote for such party. I'd never vote for this. Well, then, you've already, they don't care about you then because you're locked in. You're a good little behaving pleb.
In the thought experiment, and it may be different in the real world test, but in the thought experiment, if the only candidate in my electorate was a Greens member who would commit faithfully and sincerely and presently to fighting against abortion, if not a certainty, they would have the red hot chance of winning my primary vote. Because if you don't acknowledge the sanctity of human life, I don't know what else I can trust you with. The rest, I think I have a chance of working on if at least you acknowledge that all living humans from the moment of fertilization are inherently entitled to the same freedoms, rights, and privileges as every other living human. I can work on the other insanities, but if you don't even that basic moral compass.
They care more about a koala than a human.
Oh, this is true. But if I found a Greens member that actually cared about humans, they'd have a shot. It's
judging your potential representatives based on, they could lie to you, but based on how they're going to act and how they're going to behave. And yeah, I think you're right there.
If you find a Greens member willing to lie about being pro-life, I'll give you $100.
Oh boy, they get kicked out of the socialist club, won't they?
Yeah, they have to be quotable on the topic. LNP and ALP rely on cronyism. They need to know you'll toe the line. What if their line is not your line? You have to be the majority, and you can't do that from the sidelines. D. Hawkins, I'd love to learn more homesteading, homeschooling from Rachel. Wouldn't we all? Pip says carnivore diet is great. I'm pretty convinced. I wouldn't mind a half kilo of meat a day. Slavery is still legal in Africa. Well,
sad reality. It's happening around the world.
There's probably a few places, but they're not Western nations with Christian foundations. Democracy is a pantomime. Democracy, my phone doesn't know how to spell it. Runners' independence. I disagree, but if that makes you happy and you can get elected, then do it. Democracy, theatrical entertainment mainly for children, which involves music, topical jokes, and slapstick comedy, and is based on a fairy tale or nursery story. Daniel Hillier, this looks like a private conversation. Sorry, should have kept going. Bread and circus. Daniel says, I understand your point about the LNP being brave enough to raise the issue, but the prospect of a review still seemed weak. Look, I spoke to some front benchers and some back benchers in the LNP and was assured that there was a lot of sincerity in it. I think the reason the LNP failed to do marginally well, they performed abysmally, was because, their leader ran with the same policy, the same strategy that they've been running with ever since Joe. And that is apologize for being conservative, try and compromise, try and aim for the middle. Halfway between right and wrong is half wrong. And what Joe, Donald Trump, Margaret Thatcher all had was they were unapologetic about their beliefs. And when the media criticized them and lampooned them and pilloried them, they dismissed the media. That's why they were successful, is because they weren't campaigning to the media, which is what the LNP has done. For 35 years, we've had 2 terms of government in Queensland. That is failed strategy. Stop it. It's not working. Be conservative. They're not middle ground voters. They're not centrists. They're uninformed, leaderless, undecided voters who are looking for an argument to and a reason to vote for right instead of wrong.
There wasn't really that much difference between the two of them. And I mean, we had one neighbour who...
Deb Frecklington, when asked about what would you do if the chief health officer recommended shutting down borders, said I'd have to follow the chief health officer's advice. What's the difference between you? What do we need you for?
That's the issue. We had one neighbour who wasn't very politically active. She actually went out of her way to ring up the Premier and thank her for keeping her safe. And when she told us that, I thought, okay, there's no chance Liberals going to get in this time here in Queensland, because you're going to have people that, lockdowns work. They win elections. That's the tool. They want their strong leadership. They want to be taken care of. People are afraid. There are a lot of people out there that will just believe everything they're told, everything with the media. And so, yeah, the difference between the two here in Queensland, I mean, we've got a lot of problems here in Queensland. We need to get upper house back here in Queensland. It's insane that they can have this absolute control pretty much. And that's how we can get stupid stuff like this put through.
4-year elected dictatorships.
Yeah, so.
Yep.
Oh, and they also ran on the same thing, didn't they? That, Newman bad, that they're going to keep dragging his corpse out in the advertising until he's, been gone for a decade. They'll still be talking about it.
Yep. Kel Bunyan says, why is abortion such a big issue in today's times? Remember, if it's not on, it's not on. For anyone who has had children and now have grandchildren, how could you? On medical grounds, mother and child, sure. There are no medical grounds for an abortion. If you need an emergency end of pregnancy, you need a cesarean section, not a multiple C-sections, 90 minutes? It's relatively, maybe far less. It could be 30 minutes. But a late-term abortion requires dilation of the cervix, and I'm not going to go into too many details, but that is not quick. It can take days. That's not an emergency procedure. It's incredibly rare. We're not even talking 0.1%. where an abortion would be medically necessary.
Most of the people that do it, apparently, this is what Rachel was telling me the other day, are mothers that have already had kids.
Interesting.
So they know what they're doing.
I am aware that research shows that 70% of women who have an abortion feel like they don't have a choice. And so society has definitely failed both them and their children, that we're only presenting them one choice and claiming to be pro-choice, providing very little actual support.
It is sad.
Yeah. 3 dogs voting with imported foxes against the imported rabbit and the bandicoot. I'm not sure what that's about. Sandra Lewis says 2 days into Biden's admin, HCQ is now safe. Is this correct? Is that any...
I think I heard that. Yeah, I think
Really?
that came out. Yeah. Oh, Biden's lied about everything. All the things he promised. 50 grand student debt going. No, he's not doing that. He's not. This one gas pipeline project, cancelled it on the first day. The stimulus package, he said it'd be on day one. Still screwing around with it. Won't come out until April.
Wow.
It's the checks he was going to send everyone was meant to be $2,000. Oh, then it was $2,000, including the previous.
So what do
one.
we have to do to get you onto the Good Source platform?
Is
this a private conversation?
Yeah, maybe a bit more pure whiskey. I mean, apple juice.
That's right. Daniel Hilley says, and George Christensen's bill is a good move, but he could also be focusing on things the government could easily do, such as change Medicare regulation. That is wrong, Daniel. You would not believe how bad the spit hit the fan last time somebody in the federal government tried to defund abortion. I agree, it's the right thing to do. I am incensed that the federal government takes my tax dollars to fund the slaughter, the industrialized slaughter of living humans. That is so immoral. That is so vile. It's tyrannical compulsion to subsidize homicide. You could not elicit strong enough, accurate language from me, but it's not politically easy. What George Christensen is doing is... that gesture was meant to say low-hanging fruit. Politics is the art of the possible, and George has a spine of steel, and big fan. If you want to meet him, come to the Church and State Summit. He will be there. I love somebody. He's not a guest speaker this year. He's just bought a ticket because he wants to be there.
I've met him at an event. He's a unit. He's a big bloke. He's tall. Yeah.
He is tall. Yeah. Look, he's a Good Source contributor, so he's a colleague and a friend in that regard, and he's a fellow Christian. But he knows that if he stopped being those things, he would lose my support, not because it's tribalism, but because I want to support what's right and oppose what's wrong. And so my encouragement is get behind George, and he's georgechristensen.com.au/born alive. I think I've remembered that URL correctly. georgechristensen.com.au/born alive. Go there and sign the petition to support his legislation. Have a read of it, the draft bill there, and that would be good.
One thing I was doing on my channel was mapping out all of the abortion clinics we have here in Queensland.
Wow.
Because we've got all of the areas where you can't even protest or you can't even pray now. You can't even do any. These are no free speech areas. Not that we have free speech, but they're even
no unapproved opinions.
Yeah, all around the state here.
Wow,
that was kind of depressing. I couldn't keep doing mapping out where they all were.
Okay, HCQ, useful treatment in early stages of infection. We're going to try and move through these comments so I can catch up. Where are we currently? That was 8:36. It's now 9:03. I think we're getting further and further behind.
Aren't we doing better? No.
We're approaching half an hour behind, 27 minutes. We got down to 15 minutes at one stage. It will be good if the abortion issue is sorted nationally. For those of you who aren't familiar with George Christensen's proposed bill, it's basically to enact the federal government's powers to, I think it's called external powers, external matters, external affairs. So Australia is signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And forgive me if I haven't said that exactly right, but it's pretty much that. So it's an international treaty that we are signatories to. And so they're able to actually impose laws that make all of the states compliant with that. And the goal of this is only to say that if an abortion fails and the child is born alive during a late-term abortion, that child must be treated as a living human and given a proper duty of care that you would to any other child. Seems like common sense to
it seems
a moral person.
Really ludicrous that has to be something special here in this country.
I think there's 2 states which have that, and most of them don't.
It's such an antinatalist,
including
worldview at the moment everywhere. It's
yeah. Okay, I'm just trying to skip ahead on some of the comments now, especially where you're having conversations to yourselves. Okay, this is a good question, Daniel. It's thoughtful, sincere, original. On architecture, Florian, did you have an opinion on Donald Trump's policy to make government buildings beautiful and promote a more classical style? Let's keep it to 2 minutes.
Oh, I got a time limit now.
Just want to move through.
Yeah. Well, if you go to a government building, you want it to feel like it's a government building. You want it to feel like it has an air of authority, an air of presence. That's no different to any other. You want the sense of the space to manifest when you're there. When you go to some of these modern buildings, it doesn't feel like that. You don't have it there. It's not the same presence isn't there. And so architecture, it tends to be of the time, the zeitgeist. It represents the time. And now we've got all these modernistic things covered in flammable cladding that has all these imported dodgy things and all these other construction issues. So I think it's quite I don't mind. Honestly, if he's going for a more classical style, so a courthouse looks like a courthouse, and classical buildings look quite beautiful. So
yeah,
but that's probably
agree.
too proud boy now. I'd probably be come out as on PC and everything.
I don't know if you saw my article about the Proud Boys, but the Satanic Temple of Satan wanted to show that photo as if it proved something about me, which is ridiculous. And their argument was that if I have people at a public event, I must agree with most of. If I have dinner with them or get photographed with them, I must agree with all of their ideas.
Yeah, it's a sad, scary world that we're slowly devolving to with regards to the strategies people are using to try and you even stand next to someone evil, or you stand next to someone whose political ideas I don't agree with.
My article says I'm proud to be photographed with them because my role model, Jesus, was proud to be the friend of sinners. The social elites of his days, the morally superior hypocrites, said, "How dare you go to a tax collector's house or be seen talking with a prostitute?" They totally did the same thing to him and said, "Guilt by association. You must be endorsing their ideas. You must think they're okay." And Jesus didn't just take a selfie with them. He put it in the Bible and made sure it was recorded for eternity. I'm like, as long as I'm talking with somebody sincere and civil, especially if they've paid money to be exposed to my ideas or the ideas of the guest that I've invited, they're welcome. I'm happy to associate with them, have a meal with them, and be photographed with them. It's you flippin' morons who have a closed mind and lack completely any sincerity or civility, who are what Jesus described as swine that shouldn't have my pearls thrown before them. I'm not going to associate with you morons. You're a complete waste of time. Have some sincerity and some civility, and let's disagree enthusiastically together. And I'm just grateful that people are willing to come to those events. So everybody's welcome, of course. Just come with the right attitude. Boy, did we get off. That was architecture. Thorium energy, Pete Oosby says. What's thorium? I got no idea. That's a new one for me. I'm far from the sharpest knife in the drawer.
It's another isotope that can potentially be used to generate nuclear or radioactive energy. That's all I know about it. I've not looked at it very closely, but I know a lot of people are raving about it. I mean, you've got new generation nuclear tech that just blows everything out of the water. We're not building Chernobyl communist rubbish anymore.
Anxious Aussie says, what do you think of anti-vaxxers chanting "My body, my choice"? Pretty sure they even used one of the Redfern chants in Melbourne. Radfem chants in Melbourne. I think it's brilliant, and about time it was used accurately when there's only the chanter's body
one
in
body
question.
in there.
I agree with feminists. Your body, your choice. Tell me when the conversation's only about one body and not another living human. And I'm not interested in your philosophical definition of life. I'm interested in the biological, scientific, empirically established definition of life. So, yeah. Okay. Somebody else said they cringed at the chant.
Probably triggered by it. Bad memories, you know.
Well, I mean, it's a little...
Purple-haired people were flashing in their eyes.
Yeah. Milan Petrovic, Aussies are good little convicts. They will also always listen to their government.
Hopefully not, but...
We've talked about preferential voting a bit tonight, and so this might be a response to it, as opposed to not aware that we've talked about it. Do you think voters actually understand preferential voting, and how do we fix this? We just got to keep having a conversation. You talk about shifting the Overton window.
Oh, what do you mean? How we can do it?
Yeah. How do you advocate that that's possible?
I just try and make people aware that it exists. That's the first step, is to make people aware that what's been, you know, the Overton window has shifted so far to the left. I mean, look at Mark Latham, you know, from Labor leader to One Nation senator in New South Wales. That's a shift of the Overton window if you've ever seen one. His positions haven't changed that much over the time, and you know, now the media they call apparently One Nation's a right-wing party. I don't consider that. I'd say they're pretty centrist with a lot of their policies, but I think the first step is to make people aware of the Overton window, to make the younger generation realize that that what was considered appropriate in the past has shifted now, and you've got politicians, you've got the media, you've got the public dialogue, all are very left-leaning and all just usually portraying a biased perspective out there. And I think platforms such as YouTube and independent access to media and to get out there and to talk about things, I'm hoping that can slowly make an influence. But my first hope is to make people aware of it, because I'll mention it and people will say, oh, I've never heard about the Overton window in the comments at all. Some people are not even familiar with the term. I think that's the first point, is to get the term mentioned and discussed in the wider sphere. I'd love to see a news.com article on it, or something in one of the tabloids about the Overton window, just so people know that it exists, that it's shifted, going, okay, you know, what people thought was inappropriate 10 years ago is now even worse, or now what people think is appropriate was considered inappropriate 10 or 20 years ago. And well, look back at the quality of life back then, look back at the culture, look back at how people were living, then compare it to now. Oh, okay, you've got you can't afford a house, so you can't afford to raise a family, or everything costs so much, your quality of life is going down. Well, maybe there's certain things that have changed, maybe certain things people have advocated for politically that we need to address. So that's my perhaps somewhat naive hope that we can slowly shift it. But the first step is simply to make people aware of it. I don't know what do people talk about it? Are you from, you know, normal people, not just, you know, other people in the political sphere? Or
look, I know a lot of political junkies who aren't aware of it. So yeah, I think it's a good concept to become aware of. Now, there was a good comment here from Psychedelic 44, and I want to have a chat to that. Jesus drove out the money changers from the temple. Was he an anarchist? I actually love this topic because it talks about why we should be involved in politics. And no, it wasn't anarchy that Jesus was doing. The context of this story in Scripture was the Roman Empire had occupied ancient Israel, And what Rome does is basically parasitically take all the commerce out of the places that they occupied. It was for their economic mass and might that they did that. They built roads, they implemented justice systems, they demanded that the conquered people worship Caesar and speak the common language, Latin, and use the common currency. Now, Jews were exceptionally aggressive, protective is the right word, protective about their religion. And part of that is being defiled by things that were unclean. Roman money was unclean, and certainly Roman worship was unclean. And so for the sake of trying to keep the peace, Rome actually made some concessions and allowed ancient Israel to have their temple worship of God and to have temple currency there, which was separate from Roman currency. So money changes had to be there because Roman currency was what people brought, but then it had to be changed into temple currency so they could buy the doves and lambs and sheep and bulls and other things that were needed for the sacrificial system of worship in the temple. The problem that Jesus had wasn't with the money changers doing commerce and a fair trade in the outer courts of the temple. It was with the exploitative, oppressive rates of exchange that were being given when people had no other choice. It was a monopoly, and it wasn't that Jesus was anti-capitalism, it was that he was anti-oppression. He was anti-injustice. And that's exactly the right kind of model to bring to public policy, is we have to rebuke the oppressor, intervene in injustice, and make sure that our actions are motivated by the welfare of others. And it was always the downtrodden people that Jesus was the most concerned about. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Let's see what other comments. I think we're pretty close to needing to wrap up at approaching 2 hours. It's been a great chat. Time has flown. I always like it when it's not labored. You can have a slow hour or a fast 2 hours.
Yep.
Magnet motors use nothing for free. There's some private conversations going on here, or some random comments, or a bit of a context. Element 113, helium 3 as well. Overton window. Here's a comment. The shift in dialogue has been orchestrated, surely. And Matt Maloney says, you're spot on, Dave, and this is interesting. I think part of it was where it was. Trade has its place, but not in the temple. Would Jesus be anti-usury today? Again, the exploitative nature of interest, yes, but obviously,
would he be anti-central bank?
It's probably beyond my pay grade.
There's an interesting. Well, there's one to think about maybe for next time, because you got.
I probably need an education on the central banking.
You've got all this artificial
gold
manipulation in the market. We don't have a gold standard anymore. Right? Artificial manipulation in the market, and it's in one way it's juicing up our houses because everyone can get a loan at this insanely low rate. So, I mean, it's not. You think if there's a free market with allowed to have the flexibility that it can without all this intervention, then the market will find the right level. It will adjust. People who maybe borrowed too high and are in trouble, they're forced to sell, and then prices will start to creep down. It finds a natural level. But when you have all these artificial things thrown at it, it upsets the natural balance. So that's. I'm going to think about that one. I'm going to dwell on that a bit more now. Because it's 0.1% cash rate. It's garbage. It's not real. It's all artificial, just to juice everything up.
Yeah.
And there's all these unintended consequences. It's generations down the road that'll struggle to get to a house, and then have years of government debt that they'll have to pay to that was thrown out here to prop everyone up.
Yeah, it is interesting. And look, sometimes. Let me be helpful here. If you're new to my channel, something I frequently say is there's a lot of issues the Bible is black and white about, but when it comes to other issues, there's only wisdom in the Bible for the issue, not authority. And we must be careful to never misrepresent God as authoritatively speaking on our position when he's not. So, for example, as a great illustration, maybe exaggerating, there's no scripture in the Bible which tells us how many lanes there should be on the freeway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. But there's wisdom, and the wisdom could argue for either side. Pro-family, lower commute times equals more time with your family, and that's a very godly thing. Pro-environment, God asked us to be stewards of creation, and permanently damaging swathes of concrete through the native flora might be something as well. So there's wisdom available for both sides, and that's where we must be careful not to say God's black and white on that. And so, look, that's a conversation I'd be really happy to hear the pros and cons for, because I don't think I immediately know that they're right or wrong just yet to that. And it might be that it's right in some contexts and wrong in others. Like the concept may have some good applications and then taken to an extreme be incredibly toxic and damaging. For those, again, how does that affect those people? These are probably, even if you don't know what God's position is, you can probably know what God's concerns are. Is it oppressing people? Like if you're talking about the potential damage of people down the track because we were just short-sighted or greedy now, that's a question that God would be concerned about. So yeah. Daniel says, yes, for next time, is cryptocurrency's impact on monetary policy beneficial? We're starting to get right. There's some great comments still coming through. Maybe we should go for 3 hours.
Or if we top up the apple juice. See, Rachel will, when I'm doing a live stream, Rachel will come and bring me coffee.
That's good. Do you want coffee or do you want more apple juice?
Oh, yeah, I think apple juice.
Apple juice?
We've got
all right.
Apple juice. What do you reckon?
Well, I will take my, can you, actually, you know what? I might even summon my Rachel. You answer, do you want to answer any particular questions? Jews have discussed usury for some time and their teachings are probably applicable to Christianity. Certainly. Okay, this is you, Florian.
Which one? This one?
What did you guys think of Facebook banning the media?
I think I'm one of the 5 people in the country that's supporting Facebook.
Oh, really?
Because, well, it's the Australian government is trying to extort money from one foreign-owned business to give to legacy media, which a lot of them are foreign-owned anyway. No one is forcing the traditional media to create Facebook pages and to put their content out there. They're getting revenue and clicks from it. Facebook has to have all the service. Facebook has to have the infrastructure. Facebook has developed the IP. It's different to Google, where Google is harvesting part of the news articles and putting that out there. They're 2 very different things. So, you know, I would advocate for our government stepping back and not interfering in business. This legislation, the government want to negotiate these contracts or manage these relationships between these 2 businesses. It's like...
that always goes badly.
Oh, yeah. So it's just crazy. So many people are just taking the media line and going with it, going Facebook bad or Australia won't be bullied. No, our government are being bastards to a big company that's, you know, providing a lot of. I mean, okay, don't get me wrong. I hate Facebook. I don't like using it. It's Facebook. It's social media, but I'm not a fan of the government coming in and stepping in doing this, because then they can it's the precedent and they can start doing it to other things. You'd expect the LNP or the Liberal Party to be an advocate of at least free trade and free business. And here they are, they're destroying a opportunity for innovation. What if you have another social media company that wants to come in and then they have to abide by this law? If anyone who shares a news article, you have to pay them a portion of revenue share. And then you've also got to give them up a competitive advantage to other content creators by telling them when you're making changes to the algorithm, all this stuff. It's just really outdated. Really, it's crony capitalism going to protect legacy media. Some people are saying it was written by News Corp. It feels like it. The definition of news was so vague and so wide. That's why they started all these other places that they banned and took off Facebook a lot of them were receiving government funding, like the women's AFL. They were banned from it. They were removed. I thought they were private business. I guess they weren't. I learned something new. So all these businesses or these organizations that were gone. One viewer was telling me.
Should we talk about the uselessness of women's sport? Sorry, move on.
Well, no. My daughter exercises. I think sport is a very important thing. I think it should be left to the free market to ensure that it survives. We shouldn't be propping it up. But I mean, if they are smart enough,
we're agreed
to go out and get companies to pay them money for sponsorship, let them do that. That's
Yep.
So yeah, that's my take on it.
Matt Maloney says, good question and point. Didn't quite see it that way. Tell you what, I wish the government would just break the monopoly power of big tech, controlling media and censorship and just...
are you on any alternative platforms?
You know what? No.
Well,
I tried to be.
Yeah.
It was a very frustrating experience.
Well, yeah, they are terrible to use. People can follow.
I'm going to try and find a news article while you talk about that.
Well, there's Library. That's a good one. There's an Odyssey, a web-based one, which is for video sharing. You've got BitChute as well, and there's a lot of other online video platforms and other places where people can get content. The problem is they're not getting market penetration. It's slowly starting to happen. So, I mean, you've got to get your show on there, even just it'll be like an archive and a duplicate of this one.
Okay, now just 1 second, and we are going to take a short ad break while we watch a trailer for the Church and State Summit. It's got a great preview of the arc of conversation happening. You'll hear from most of the key speakers this weekend. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. Let's see if I can do this.
We're often told that Australia started with convicts as a secular nation, and that's the way we've always been.
What should you do when your Christian beliefs and your Christian duties are made illegal acts?
We have a right to participate in society. We have a right and an obligation to present our Christian point of view.
It's really important that we as faith people, as Christians, continue to advocate for issues in the public space.
Many people are convinced that Christianity is simply not true, that faith is lazy, anti-intellectual thinking, that Christianity is a delusion. And I want to tackle that head on.
What do we do when our church and even the denomination that we're in slides into apostasy?
How should a Christian think about critical race theory? I mean, what is critical race theory?
Did you know that many post-abortive women and men regret their abortions?
Our nation's kids are not okay. Almost half of our children under age 13 are experiencing some form of family fragmentation.
Author Roy Williams has written that as a Christian, he's sick of the Christian influence in Australia being referred to as either minimal or malign. History tells us that this is not the case.
Because we contribute to human flourishing better than any other system of values.
You know, the Christians in Victoria are facing this very dilemma right now. And in my political work, I'm seeing signs that this is just...
Many other people think that far from just being an irrelevant delusion, that in fact religion and Christianity in particular is harmful to society, that its ideas are repressive, outdated, and damaging to people's lives.
I'll be joined by a host of incredible speakers who are going to be dealing with all sorts of practical topics about being a Christian in 21st century Australia.
I want to unpack and analyse critical race theory through a Christian biblical worldview.
These photos are shocking and raw and real, and they're reaching people around the world on both sides of the fence.
So what would it look like if we approach these policies that impact marriage, parenthood, even reproductive technologies through the eyes of a child? What would change? And what are other countries doing in this area?
We must protect the family unit and support families, support Australians who want to start a family.
But the role of defending our children does not simply lie with our legislators.
I would like to share with you my amazing journey of following God when it doesn't make sense. I went from missionary to newborn photographer to the founder of 2 photography ministries that would go on to reach millions of people around the world.
It is the job of ordinary people, courageous types, with a fortitude and the willingness to voice unpopular opinions at times. And they can bring about changes that our future generations desperately need.
Many Christians feel voiceless at the moment, unaware of how to respond to these challenges and have meaningful God conversations, feeling pushed out of the public square.
What can we learn from those who've experienced this in the past? What is the best way to respond? And why does getting this right actually make a difference in the wider aims of what we're trying to do to make Christ known to our entire nation that we love?
I can't wait to get into these questions.
So don't miss this opportunity either in person or online to join me and the amazing other speakers at this unique Australian summit.
Join me either in person or online.
So I'd love it if you joined me and everyone else for the conference, Church and State.
The Church and State Summit.
The Church and State Summit.
At the Church and State Summit in February.
All right, and this time we are muting the video so you won't have to compete with audio, pausing it as well in the other screen, but that should all be muted. All right. Okay. Let's see what some conversations. Good question. Point. Didn't quite see it that way. I may have thrown a grenade here, which starts a few bushfires.
Yeah.
YouTube official says women's sport is a Trojan, maybe means Trojan horse for left-wing political agendas. Now, I love girls playing sport. Everybody should be able to enjoy sport. Sport's great. My objection is how it's being forced down our throats as if it's any better than watching the Australia B cricket team.
But does anyone watch it? I thought don't they give the tickets away at the AFL? I mean,
it's a hard sell because they're not as good, and that's not a subjective opinion. If it was a subjective opinion, if it wasn't objectively true, there would be no difference between men's and women's sports. They would all compete in the one game.
Isn't that where it's going now?
There's men's sports and then there's unisex sports. That's where it's going. So the people who can't compete put on a skirt and play in the girls' game. But if you want to really say you're the best at the sport, then you're going to compete against all genders and dominate, or you can't say that. And that not being objectively true, the concept of a level playing field requires distinction of the genders. We could get into the transgender sport issue here very easily, but for me, my pet peeve is exactly that. That look, we're watching less than the best players and pretending like they're the same value. See, here's one of the real tests of this. The American women's soccer chief whinger, who went on some rant about not getting paid as much as American men's. Megan, was it? I think her name might have been a Megan somebody. Megan, if you know the name, leave it in the comments. Google it for us. But she was having a big whinge about not being paid the same as men's sport. But that's because you don't generate the same income for your industry. You're actually literally, to the technical definition of it, worth less. It's not personal. It's actually professional. Siri is helping.
They're spying on you. I must admit, when they had the Com Games here, I went with a mate down the Gold Coast to watch the women's weightlifting, and I was looking forward to seeing the transsexual weightlifter. I wanted to see how they'd go at the lifting, just for the novelty of it. Didn't turn up, didn't happen, pulled out of it, so I was a bit disappointed. But it was impressive seeing these girls lifting all the weights and
that's fine.
I think it's more so that government throwing money at these things, and they're lost leaders.
Yeah,
that's my frustration with it.
Interesting. Kel Bunyan says, Dave, you should put your conversation on YouTube. What if Facebook got cranky with you? Where is Donald T these days? Well, good news, Kel. We are currently going live to 2 YouTube channels and 2 Facebook channels. What I need to be able to do is use the same technology to live stream to BitChute and the other video ones that are...
I don't think that the only...
No, they don't. These platforms don't
DLive is a... You should probably get it on Twitch. On Twitch, political content on Twitch. That's another audience there.
Really?
I thought
it was just for gamers.
It is, but a lot of gamers are political too, and it's more and more coming out. They couldn't hurt. Yeah,
it's true.
It's more effort getting it set up.
Well, what we really need, and this is what we do. I'll put the little banner up here. What the vision is, why I built this studio with supporters, donations, and why we keep doing this is we actually need an alternate to the mainstream media, which don't deserve that name anymore. From henceforth, I will refer to them as the lying harlot. They don't deserve any credibility, and there are good people in it, but as a collective, it's polluted and corrupted. And so we actually need Australians to put their hand in their pockets and fund studios and staff so that we can take the best of Heise Says, cut it up, and make sure that it reaches 10 times the audience. And the same with George Christensen's show and Lyle Shelton's show and Warren Mundine's show and Jacinta Price. And there's so many people that we can bring into this, but they have families to feed. And you know, people don't work for free. We need technical producers, etc. We're doing really well and we're growing well, but there's so far to grow before we're competing and actually providing a disruption to mainstream media. And those kind of basic funds help us just to get the staff to be able to stream to multiple channels and where they're not easily automated because they're the big tech players, which all play nice with each other, then it just requires double the effort to do it to all of the other ones that you're probably thinking of right now that you wish we were also on.
Well, yeah, even just uploading to other stuff, it takes a lot of time. It can be frustrating, and you know, you've got to go where the market is, where the people are, and some of these alternative platforms, the mainstream don't know how to use them. They can't find them, and they're growing. And you know, it's good to support them because you know these businesses need support too. They need people to get out there and to put their content on there. But it can be a bit exhausting putting it, you know, particularly if you're getting your shows up there and there as well. And
yeah,
so it's a double-edged sword.
That's right. So anyway, thank you to the Good Source supporters. Thank you to the Pellowe Talk personal supporters. Thank you to the Heise Says supporters. Without your contributions, without your sharing, liking, engaging in the comments, then that really makes our audience and reach a whole lot smaller. So thank you for that. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My actual Dave Pellowe page didn't get shut down in the shutdown, but the Good Source one did. And
oh, really? You lost your page?
Yeah, it just...
Media organization, there you go.
Good, exactly.
That's it, you're doing the right thing.
Now, I don't know what the situation is if everybody else is back on, but Good Source is back on today. And if it is just me and not everybody, I think it's because I changed the category of the Good Source Facebook page. So it used to say the Good Source news/media. Now it says the Good Source plumbing service.
Actually, I need some trenches dug. Can you get the Good Source workers?
We are in trench warfare. This is trench warfare. Oh, it's a war of attrition, institution by institution. Plus, we have to flush the effluent out of mainstream media. Now, we're a plumbing service. Very good. All right. Now, so let's have a look at some more comments. Cross-eyed one has a different opinion on the temple dialogue. You can check out one of the YouTube channels to find those comments. Overton window or Plato's cave, says Psychedelic.
Oh.
Is Plato's cave a thing that I haven't heard of?
Hang on. I've had too much apple juice to articulate it clearly. It's more so that people, Plato's cave, where you've got these people tied up in a cave, and all they see are the shadows in front of them moving in front of a candle, and they're assuming that that's reality. So they don't know reality until they escape the cave. So, I mean, you could say in one way, people will simply believe everything that they're told and that's put forward to them. So many people will simply believe the mainstream media. They'll believe anyone that's, they'll believe anything the media tells them, that who's a right winger or who's a bad or wrong think. And for me, actually, one thing that woke me up to question a lot of what was coming from our glorious authority figures was dietary guidelines from the Australian government. If you actually look at them, they're so out of date, they're so bad, and they're so wrong. And people are getting unhealthy from that. And then when I realized, okay, the government's getting that wrong, what else can they get wrong? So I did a very bad job about that, but maybe I should look into it further. I want Overton window first in public dialogue.
Back to sport. Kel Bunyan says, I'm over men's off-field conduct. Seeing any women's sports person sexting. Have you seen any women's sports person sexting or fighting? Dave, I think you're out of line on this. Good. I'm glad you disagree. You're welcome to, and you're being civil and sincere about it, so it's fantastic.
I don't think
off-field conduct
would it get as much attention in the media?
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's the question. They'll be all over it if a bloke's doing something wrong. A rugby player's being an idiot. I mean, we've all been young. We've all done stupid things when we were younger, and a lot of them are in a situation where maybe everyone's treating them like a demigod and everything. And, a lot of them will act like idiots as young men, and sometimes you need to go through some stupid times to learn how to live life properly.
The male brain doesn't finish developing until 25.
Exactly.
Women are a bit sooner, so that could be an explanation.
Perhaps it could. Maybe we just need to give it time when women's sports gets more widespread.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends.
I don't. Oh, geez.
I mean, what's your issue with women's sports? My issue with it is any government simply subsidising these loss-leading things.
My issue with it is, why aren't we promoting university sport? They're about the same level of competitiveness and skill.
Okay, yeah.
It's a free market thing. It's being rammed down our throats as politically correct virtue signalling.
Could be for Olympic glory for Australia.
I don't know. Like, why do we care about the Australian women's cricket team? If they can play cricket as good as the men.
Do we have a women's cricket?
Yeah, they put it on TV and they pretend, they give it commentary on. You want to listen to the ABC radio, you have to change channels because they're talking about a sport where they play as good as the men's university level. If they could play as good as the men's team, they would be on the men's team. I mean, are we that sexist and bigoted that we're going to take 6 of the best cricket players in Australia and not take them on a tour to win the Ashes because they wear skirts?
So can women join the men's cricket team?
Well, this is what I'm saying. Would we say no if they were actually as good as the best 11 men? I would be happy for them to play. I'd be happy for women to go and help us win the Ashes if they were in the best 11 players or 15 or whatever the squad is. I'd be very happy for them to go and help us win the Ashes. Win. Totally. I believe in level playing field. What I don't believe in is what the left call equity, which is forced equality of outcomes. And that, I mean, if you want to watch women's sport, watch it, but don't make us watch it. Don't make us listen to it.
That's the
and don't pretend it's just as good as the elite teams and sports. The reason sports are gendered is because men have biological advantages in strength and bone density and even proportions. Muscle mass and all these things. And that's why it's cheating for a bloke to put on a skirt, start taking estrogen, and call himself a woman and pretend he's equal to other women. No, he's superior because he's had 20, 25, 30 years of developing a body as a man, and is biologically a man. He has an unfair biological advantage, which is potentially physically harmful.
Some of the horror stories you're seeing now. But it comes. You're born with the muscle fiber density from a kid. Right there, and there's the difference already in the genders there. So yeah, I didn't know we had a female cricket team.
Then I must be listening to too much ABC.
Yeah, I'm a bad Australian then. I'm not following it.
All right, Florian, what's your thoughts on Eddie Maguire's resignation or woke sacking? His cancellation.
I haven't followed it that closely. I saw it would happen, and there were a few criticisms about how he's just getting turfed out compared to he's getting turfed out for a few instances, and then Andrews is getting nominated for an award as the Premier of Victoria. So Melbourne's just a funny place.
You kill 800 people, you get re-elected as Premier.
Sadly, it's just the state of the world now. This is what happens when you've got such a culture that's so left-leaning. You've got all about shaming, and the danger is we have a generation that is growing up thinking this is normal, thinking that if dogpiling onto someone in Twitter is normal, cancelling someone, they're going to grow up thinking this type of stuff is normal, and this is behaviour that they expect. A lot of them are also left-leaning socialist supporters. They think the government should intervene in people's lives. They think that they're only 1 or 2 steps away from authoritarianism. So, I mean, sadly, I just think it's a sign of the times right now, to be honest, and I'm not at all surprised it happens. I think it's we need to. I guess it's kind of lost hope on us, to be honest. I mean, what do you think about it? Are you at all surprised?
No. I think Eddie Maguire was he either had to risk shunning from his tribe, the political left, or he had to walk the plank. I would have risked shunning. I would have what are you kids smoking? I said, we are proud and celebrating the fact that we've addressed this. When I used the words proud and celebrating, it wasn't celebrating racism or proud of racism. I mean, surely a first grader could have understood that. I mean, on what planet do you think he was serious? Seriously, you thought he was saying he was proud that the club was racist, allegedly? Wait, I mean, what space cadet inferred that from his speech? I mean, you're an absolute moron. And for him to resign over that simply because it was a popular demand.
Maybe there's someone else. Maybe he wanted out.
Well, he was already resigning at the end of the year. They just made him go now instead of wait out the end of the season. So it was clear he was already tired. And maybe at the end of the day, he was doing it just to essentially
protect the brand, or
protect the brand,
deflect the potential hate from all the wokerati and the nutters.
But still, again, I think somebody with more of a spine would have gone out with some grenades and said, look, for the sake of the club, I'm walking away. I'm doing this to protect them. But you're all a bunch of liars and hypocrites, and you have absolutely no regard for truth. I told you that's not what I said. It's not what I meant. For you to misconstrue my words to whatever you want them to mean, despite reality, is a pathological condition you all need some help for. And I'm done with all of you. I'm going to take my millions and I'm going to go play golf. I hope you enjoy life without me, because I'm going to enjoy it without you. See ya, suckers. That would have been a good resignation. But stand your ground or tell the truth. The left are guilty again of eating their own, of this cancel culture rubbish. Donald Trump says, yada, 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 let's all go to the Capitol, march, make sure you're peaceful, make sure you're well behaved. and the left say, what you say you intended is irrelevant. Your intentions don't count. We heard what you said, and you're guilty. But for 9 months previous, Democrats were lining up to rationalize and justify the looting, rioting, and murders of the Black Lives Matter protests for 9 months sustained, where they attacked federal buildings like courthouses and police precincts, razed them to the ground with people like the current Vice President Kamala Harris advocating and applauding a fund to pay bail and put these people back out to do more crimes, and they're not guilty of incitement because of their words like, oh, we need more of this. This is what happens. You have to understand that now context is relevant. Now intentions are relevant. It's all double standard hypocrisy. And Eddie McGuire is a victim of
that's one thing where the left are quite effective. They'll get in power and they will do everything they can to destroy their opposition.
Yep.
And you can see that happening. They'll salt the earth, destroy any potential for opposition, and they will hold onto power with every single thing they can and authority. We're seeing that's quite a danger. And the opposition, well, are they as active, or are they as vigilant? And no, most people aren't. And
no, they're not. And this comes back to the thing I said earlier in the show, talking about how unapologetic Joe Bjelke-Peterson was, how unapologetic Donald Trump was, how unapologetic Margaret Thatcher was. They had this killer instinct that went for the jugular on their enemies' bad ideas. They just said, of course, I don't even want to try and do imitations and quotes right now, but it's what we've lacked ever since then. Conservative leaders since Joe Bjelke-Peterson have tried to be liked. They've got this theory that they have to go for the middle third of undecided voters and abandon their position. And so they're just compromising and appeasing instead of leading.
Well, one could argue that's why the lockdown are working so well, because all the Dan lovers. I did a video about Dan getting a nomination, and I have never had so many bots on my channel.
Oh, really?
Like hundreds of them just commenting, "Good news, great Dan." Boom. Now I'm thinking they're bots because the channels are quite new, but I'm starting to worry that some of them are not. That there's so many people that are so happy that he's getting this nomination for this civic award, this leadership award, after all that he's done. I think you've got a whole lot of people in that state that want the leadership, that want the strong man coming in, and sure, they're protests, they're people that are angry, but
yeah,
every one of them will say, and I've got a lot of viewers in Victoria, they'll say, what alternative do we have? The Liberals are a bunch of wet fish. They're not proposing anything down there.
And, this is why about time the Nationals and the Coalition are considering, finally, seriously considering removing the ban on considering nuclear energy. It's genius. We just have to come up with something that's diametrically the opposite of it's better if we just have some conviction about the important things in life. But if we have to come up with something, nuclear energy is a great differentiator. Dare Labor Party to be as forward-thinking and environmentally friendly as nuclear energy. Dare them to do it. Best case scenario, they say yes. It's win-win, I think. And in the same token, I actually think Christian values a really good campaign strategy for a conservative leader, because you can prosecute a really good argument intellectually. You don't need to quote scripture. It just makes sense.
So how do you feel about ScoMo as a Christian leader? What's your rating of him?
There's good ScoMo, there's bad ScoMo. It depends on the day, it depends on the decision. He is a transactional politician. He does what's good for his career and what's good for his
that's a very good description.
long-term prospects. He's in some respects, a mini John Howard, in that his appeasement does work to form a broad consensus, but he's extravagantly generous to the left. When he won the election, he had a mandate to do as he wanted, and he could have appointed Andrew Hastie and Amanda Stoker and other really strong conservatives to the ministry, and had an equal balance of conservatives and moderates, but he didn't. He was heavily biased towards the left of the party. And so that to me shows it's less about conviction for him and more about transactions, about what he has to gain from what he does. And the arguments that he prosecutes in public are the ones that he believes will be winners. And there's not a lot of hills that he's willing to die on that aren't also coincidentally popular, or at least marketable.
Well, he is for marketing.
Yeah, so the hashtags tell us. And I'm not trying to be cynical, and I'm not cynical. I'm actually trying to be honest, and calling balls and fouls, as the saying goes. When it's good, it's good, and when it's bad, it's bad. I think we all need to be that as undecided, intellectually honest voters. But then you have people like John Ruddock, who is pro-liberal, but he's not pro-Christian. He couldn't care less about Christianity, but he's a very insightful, shrewd commentator. And his personal, honest statement is he doesn't know what Scott Morrison stands for. I don't think anybody could accuse me of that if I was ever Prime Minister, which is probably why I'll never be Prime Minister, let alone politician. But and I'm certainly doing my very best to dig a hole impossible to get out of with this show. But, I think that would make... I think Scott's intentions are in the right place. Let me give him that credit. Mm-hmm. I think he would be heartbroken that somebody would sincerely say about him they don't know what he stands for. And that is a criticism. You should be heartbroken by that. But it's also a compliment, I guess, backhanded compliment, if a compliment, that he would be that it would matter to him. He would want to be known as somebody who stands for things, but he also might be so entrenched in the machinations of the Canberra bubble that he would rationalise it and explain it away and say, "Well, you don't understand. Politics is the art of the possible," and so on.
Yeah.
Cross-eyed one. With all due respect, the comment is, our PM is too heavily influenced by his lefty mentor, Mr. Hillsong. That's a stupid thing to say. I mean, you have to substantiate that. It's such a dumb criticism. You're talking about Brian Houston, I assume. And again, it's cheap. It's a cheap shot. I think this is a better comment from Mr. Psychedelic. ScoMo staying close to the Overton window. I think that's hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, that's it. Right, go. Yeah, yep. I think you're right, though. I think if even here in Queensland, if our opposition came and made a bold statement at the next election to actually differentiate, provide an alternative, that could make a point of difference. That would be something people would vote for. That might be enough, because they didn't feel like they did that at the last election at all.
Right.
And that's why there's hardly any difference between the two parties, it feels like. So we need, maybe, honestly, the LA Liberals need, well, here in Queensland, they've had a lot of terms in opposition, so they've got nothing to lose.
Yeah,
they should
absolutely.
They should try anything they can to actually be brave enough.
I'm like, hey, LNP Queensland, let me be your campaign director for the state. What have you got to lose? I mean, seriously, you're 35 years in the wilderness with the occasional flash in the pan. You've proved you don't know how to win elections. The worst you could do is more of what you already do. But you have to change. You have to change something. YouTube official says the hardest I've seen Morrison was against Craig Kelly and the Australian Post CEO. The Greens and Labor Party get a free pass from Morrison. Yep, that's also fair. So wonderful. Well, what do you think? We should get close to start wrapping this up?
I think so. I think we've had a nice chat.
It has been great. Thank you.
It's good catching up again. It's been a while.
Again, I am so sorry you drove through the storms and the rain. And
everything
to get here.
I had aquaplaning on the car. Trees were coming down. You know, it was dangerous.
Dogs running from the thunder across the front of the car.
Yeah. I'd like 5 groups of people try to mug me. I had to drive through them. It's like
zombie speed bumps.
Yeah, zombie apocalypse.
Who would have known the basement of St Mary's was such a perilous destination?
It was such a dangerous journey. I was very brave.
He turned up on my doorstep and I'd forgotten he was coming. He's wet and bedraggled.
I'm that important. No one remembers me.
Well, my excuse is that I was preparing for you at the Church and State Summit. So final plug for that before we start heading away tonight. One of the other differentiating policies that we could go hard on at an election is Matt Canavan's policy, pet policy of income splitting for families. So if there's a husband earning $100,000 a year, and a wife who's a full-time stay-at-home mum, then the household is taxed on $100,000 or $50,000 between the two adults, as opposed to a really high marginal rate for one person, and the other person's not paying any tax at all because they're not earning anything at all. But that one income has to go between two adults. So the tax benefits and the tax threshold.
Our tax system needs to be simplified.
You wouldn't have to fund childcare for that person. The advantages would just be so miles in front, and the benefit to the population by encouraging families to have more babies. But
then if people spend time with their children, how can they be indoctrinated by the state?
There's the problem.
You're thinking it wrong here. You need them in childcare.
It'll never work.
Yeah.
It'll never work. That is exactly the problem.
That's a good. I like that policy. That's good.
Rightio. Well, if you can come along to the Church and State Summit, that's great. Last time I looked, there were 16 tickets left, and that was several hours ago. It is this Friday. Starts at 12:30 Queensland time, 1:30 Sydney time. If you're going to be watching online, I would encourage you to watch online wherever you are in Australia. It's a non-denominational. It is Christian, but it's non-denominational and non-partisan. We want to talk about issues and try and get God's mind on things. The arc of conversation in this Church and State Summit is going to be, firstly, to prove that Christianity is true, secondly, to prove that Christianity is good, and thirdly, that Christianity makes good public policy. Now, all 14 sessions are only $20. That's 2 days of conference. Great watching. You can watch it live. It's going to be a professional broadcast with something like 5 cameras. We're going to be having guest speakers live from Rome, from America, from Perth, which is the other side of the world, and most of the speakers are going to be here in person. But you can have the full privileges and benefits of all of the content information just by watching online for a mere $20. And that's going to be a lot of fun. The last session on Saturday is actually a 2-hour debate on 4 different topics with Martin Iles, David Goodwin, Senator Amanda Stoker, and myself. And that's going to be a whole lot of fun. There's a lot of people who are buying tickets just for the Saturday afternoon session. So there's very few of those left. But churchandstate.com.au is the address where you will be able to buy your tickets in person or live streaming or delayed videos as well. And next year, we're going to have great satellite venues in Melbourne and Hobart at the same time. But that is it for tonight. So I want to thank you very much for your company. Florian, thank you so much for coming into the Good Source studio.
Thank you for the invitation.
And hopefully this isn't the last time. We had so much fun.
We'll
I
have
don't
to do it
think
again.
a
And
Pellowe
thank you-
Talk show's gone for so long.
Thank you for the 12-year-old apple juice.
My pleasure.
If not now, then when will we see an end to all this pain? Oh, it's not enough to do nothing. It's time for us to do something.